Library of Heaven's Path, author Hung Sao Tianya.
Chapter 2.
Needless to say, Hong Tian Academy or even those top sects might not even have God or saint cultivation technique. Besides, even they have it. It was hidden deep inside the sect and normal people would be unable to obtain it. What he wanted to do was to create such a skill so that his training would be more efficient so as to hasten the rate of the rise of his cultivation by leaps and bounds. I don't have any 4-Dan cultivation method. Let me go to the Teacher Compendium Pavilion to take a look. Practicing the Hong Tian 9. Dan formula. The cultivator could only retrieve the secret manual for the next realm after breaking through their current realm. At this moment, he only had the cultivation method for 3-Dan. He had yet to see the one for 4-Dan. Walking out, the sun hadn't set for too long and there were still quite a few passerby on the road. The bright moonlight reflected on the surface of the pavement, dyeing it with a layer of silver. A few couples who had just tasted the forbidden fruit were snuggling under the tree as they whispered sweet nothings to one another. Even so, the surroundings have a serene atmosphere. Zhang Xuan didn't bother himself with these. Instead, he hastened his footsteps and soon, a giant pavilion appeared before him. The Compendium Pavilion was split into two main sectors, teacher and student. Within it lied the compendium of all kinds of secret manuals and cultivation techniques. It was one of the most important locations in the entire academy. Elder Mo. Walking to the entrance, he bowed to an elderly who was sitting at a proximity from the great door. Elder Mo was one of the guardians of the Compendium Pavilion. It was unknown what realm he had reached, but it was said that he was ranked among the top in the academy in terms of his strength. However, as he hadn't fought for many years, no one could tell his actual strength for sure. "You're here. You have reached Fighter 4-Dan?" Elder Mo looked over and stroked his sparse beard. "It is just luck." Zhang Xuan didn't try to conceal the fact that he had reached Fighter 4-Dan. "Good! Good! Train harder. The academy still needs young blood like you." Elder Mo nodded his head in satisfaction. "Yes!" Zhang Xuan didn't continue speaking, and instead lifted his leg to walk into the room. The moment he left, Elder Mo shook his head and lamented, "He is a good child, just that he is lacking a little in talent and is slightly too slow in his cultivation." Other cultivators took around 2 years to break through Fighter 3-Dan, whereas Zhang Xuan took a whole 3 years to do so. His talent was indeed subpar. Upon reaching Fighter 4-Dan, if he were to train properly, he should still be able to become an average teacher. Just that. I hope he doesn't score too badly for his teacher qualification examination the next time. After muttering for a bit, Elder Mo didn't go on any further and shut his eyes once more. Zhang Xuan was one of the more polite ones among the numerous young teachers. He didn't really like him, but neither did he dislike him. It was just that he found it lamentable for him to be lacking in talent. Oblivious to the mutterings of Elder Mo, Zhang Xuan walked into the Compendium Pavilion. Although the Hong Tian Academy's Compendium Pavilion was of significant size, nowhere paling in comparison to the working location of his previous life, it was still much smaller than the Library of Heaven's Path in his mind. The two weren't even on the same level. He walked quickly to the cultivation technique section and to the 4th row of it. Indeed, the Hong Tian 9 Dan Formula 4-Dan cultivation technique was in here. Reaching out to grab it, he casually flipped through it. A similar secret manual appeared in his mind. Taking a look, it was around the same as the one for 3-Dan. There were more than 1,000 flaws. There are other secret manuals here as well. Let me take a look at them as well. After the prior experience with breaking through, Zhang Xuan didn't focus on the flaws in it, and instead looked towards the bookshelf before him. On the bookshelf of the 4th row, there was an amazing amount of different kinds of cultivation technique manuals. They were all cultivation techniques for 4-Dan, and there were quite plenty of notes and explanations in them left behind by predecessors. Just by a rough look, there were around a few thousand of them. If it was someone else, their eyes would definitely blur from the sight. After all, there were so many books with countless notes left in them. Furthermore, some of the theories for the cultivation techniques are at ends with each other, so it was hard to gauge whether which one was the right one. If one were to randomly cultivate without knowing better, it was possible for them to go berserk. However, Zhang Xuan was different. Possessing the Library of Heaven's Path, he was capable of telling which one was the right one. He didn't hesitate to grab a book and flip through it. A similar book appeared in his mind. Zhang Xuan didn't stop and picked up the next one. He wasn't browsing through them nor picking them. Rather, he was trying to increase the number of books in the Library of Heaven's Path so that he could derive a more precise cultivation method. Walala. The sound of flipping pages filled the entire room, a weak will, impatient and unrealistic. Hearing those words, Elder Mo frowned. Since Zhang Xuan had already chosen to cultivate in the Hongtian 9-Dan formula, then he shouldn't think about any other skills. He should make use of the time to copy the formula for the 4-Dan so that he could analyze it and start training. Although it was possible to make use of the strengths of others to make up for the flaws of one. The more miscellaneous knowledge one read, the easier it was for one to get impatient and rash. In the end, it was a small thing if he achieved nothing in the end. If things go wrong, it was very possible for him to go berserk and ruin his cultivation. 30 years ago, a talented genius blessed with great talents who thought he was much greater than others insisted on looking through the various cultivation techniques to create an ultimate one tailored to him. In the end, due to reading too many manuals, he became uncertain of the route he should walk on and his cultivation went berserk. As an individual, he became insane as well. Being greedy would cause indigestion. This was the absolute truth and reality. For him to take 3 years to break through Genki realm, his talent was apparent. With such talent, he should just obediently cultivate 4-Dan of Hongtian 9-Dan formula. Yet, he chose to flip through other manuals. Was he just trying to seek for something thrilling? With one look, one could tell he was an unrealistic fellow. The good impression that he held towards Zhang Xuan disappeared without a trace. Putting on a show, just to obtain the fleeting praises of the crowd. After a cold harumph, he realized that Zhang Xuan was just casually flipping through without taking a careful look at them. Elder Mo's eyebrows knitted even closer together, and he felt a little disgusted with him. If one were to study those manuals closer, even though they were being unrealistic, they would still obtain some knowledge on them. However, this fellow simply and casually flipped through it, and given the speed he flipped at, even Elder Mo himself was unable to look through the contents properly. If so, what could a lad who had just reached Fighter 4-Dan see? Now he was truly putting on a show to obtain the fleeting praises of the crowd. The Academy's culture is really degenerating, getting worse with each passing generation. After those words, he shut his eyes, refusing to bother with this unrealistic fellow anymore. I'm done. His pace of browsing was extremely fast. He was able to finish flipping through a normal manual in just 1 or 2 breaths. In 2 hours, he finished browsing through all of the cultivation manuals, and thousands of identical books had appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. Time to return to assess them. Knowing that his aim had been achieved, he smiled and walked towards the outside without hesitation. You aren't going to copy any notes. Seeing him leaving empty-handed, Elder Mo couldn't resist asking. Even if he is unrealistic, he should at least copy the secret manual so that he can analyze it after returning to his living quarters. Coming and leaving empty-handed. Are you coming here to play? It's okay. I am actually just taking a casual look. Unsure about what the other party was thinking about, Zhang Xuan smiled and took his leave. Taking a casual look? Frivolous! The Academy should punish this fellow. How can such a frivolous person be a teacher? Elder Mo waved his hand in anger. Cultivation manuals were the core of every cultivator, and every cultivator should hold some respect towards them. However, this fellow only came to take a look and returned back after casually flipping through them. His behavior was unacceptable. Looks like he should have a talk with the principal to deal with these teachers, who were sullying the culture of the academy. Returning back to his living quarters, Zhang Xuan took out pen and papers and flipped through the Hongtian 9-Dan Formula 4-Dan manual to copy down the correct portions of it. Then, he took out another book and copied down the correct portions as well. After flipping through a few of them, Zhang Xuan rubbed his temples. It was actually quite troublesome and tiring to flip through a few thousand books like that. It wasn't as simple as he thought it would be. Just when he was thinking about how he could hasten his pace, his mind suddenly jolted again. The thousands of book that was just compiled in the Library of Heaven's Path crumpled and slowly merged as one. Weng. The few thousand books merged together completely, with a crisp sound to form a single book. There wasn't any name on the book. Zhang Xuan casually flipped through it. This is the compilation of the correct routes in the few thousand secret manuals? After taking a look at it, Zhang Xuan's face flushed red from excitement. Previously, he was still troubled by how he could find the correct route out of a few thousand of books. It would have been an arduous task taking a long period of time. Never in his dreams would he expect that the library would compile it automatically. This book, there isn't a single flaw in it. The nameless book was the compilation of all of the correct cultivation route, and there wasn't a single flaw in it. The contents of it were no longer Hongtian 9-Dan formula, or any one of the individual manual that was compiled into it. It could be said to be something no one had ever seen before. Since it is the correct method chosen and compiled by the Library of Heaven's Path, let's call it Heaven's Path Divine Art. A thought flashed through his mind and he decided on the name of the nameless manual. Weng. As though sensing his thoughts, the empty cover trembled and 4 words appeared on it. Heaven's Path Divine Art. Let me give it a try. After obtaining a cultivation technique without any flaws, Zhang Xuan didn't hesitate to follow the method recorded in the Heaven's Path Divine Art and starts to meditate. The pores on his body widened as he absorbed spirit energy from the air into his body. Fighter 4 Dan. 1 Dan Juxi, 2 Dan Dantian, 3 Dan Zhenqi, 4 Dan Pigu. Juxi Realm. Cultivators would learn innate breathing and sensing of spirit in the air. Also, they would gain the ability to look into their body and control the flow of spirit energy in their body with their mind. Dantian Realm, the opening up of a cultivator's Dantian to allow it to hold spirit energy as well as to reform his body, turning a normal human into a true fighter. Zhenqi Realm, the gathering of the spirit energy in the Dantian to create Zhenqi. Pigu Realm, the Zhenqi-filled Dantian would overflow and enrich one's body, causing the cultivator's physical body to become powerful. The capabilities of their organs would also be strengthened, thus turning them into true experts. The first 3 dans of a fighter were the building of foundations. Only at the 4 Dan did the result of one's cultivation truly reflected on one's body, causing one to stray away from illnesses and become stronger. The cultivation method of Hongtian 9-Dan manual was to make use of the Zhenqi overflowing from the Dantian to nourish one's body, thus reforming and tempering one's bones, muscles, tendons, and skin. However, the Heaven's Path. Divine Art was different. It used the spirit energy from the surrounding to nourish one's body while having the Zhenqi in one's body overflow to the other parts of the body at the same time. Gugu Gugu. The stream of spirit energy flowed through his veins towards his entire body. The Zhenqi would mend and fill up the incomplete parts as it flowed through his veins. Geiji! Geiji! It didn't take long for the infusion of both spirit energy and Genki to strengthen his bones and muscles. It felt as though it had been tempered with concentrated fire as it turned clear, emitting a warm glow. Boom! After the Genki circulated around his body for an unknown number of times, his body suddenly jolted, and he felt as though he had broken through a certain bottleneck. A surge of relaxation gushed through his body. Previously, his body felt as though it had been bound by some shackles, but now his entire body felt light, and he had perfect control over every single motion of his. It felt as though he had broken through his cocoon to be reborn as a butterfly. Fighter 4 Dan Pigu Realm. I have finished cultivating in this realm? Opening his eyes, Zhang Xuan was still in a state of disbelief. The sign of breaking through the Pigu realm was the destruction of the shackles of one's body, allowing one to ascend into greater heights. How long had he been training? 2 hours? 4 hours? Pungent. Curious, he looked at his body and realized that there was a layer of filth on the surface of his skin. Pigu realm was the nourishment of one's body using Genki, expelling the impurities within one's body and cleansing one's muscles and bones, thus reforming their body. From birth, humans would ingest all kinds of food for survival. As a result, they would accumulate more and more impurities in their body. In the Pigu realm, through the nourishment of Genki, one cleansed their body of impurities, and only then were they able to break through the shackles of their body and return back to nature. I have long heard of the Pigu realm, but I have never seen anyone who can expel so much impurities. Smelling the pungent smell from his body, Zhang Xuan couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed a pail and cleaned himself while muttering under his breath. Fighter 4 Dan Pigu realm was the cleansing of one's muscles and bones. It was already not bad for one to strengthen their body just by a small bit in one sitting. He had never heard of a person expelling so much impurities that their entire body would stink from it. Very quickly, he finished cleaning himself. At this moment, Zhang Xuan suddenly realized that his body was as clear as a jade and as smooth as a mirror. All of the scars which he accumulated from his previous training sessions have disappeared without a trace. Right now, he was just like a newborn infant, perhaps even smoother than a newborn infant. My Genki. Surprised by the changes in his body, his attention turned to his dantian. His entire body trembled. The murky Genki that was in his dantian previously had turned to become as clear as water, and it was emitting refreshing fragrance. Without a doubt, it was definitely superior Genki. Not only is my body enhanced, even the quality of my Genki has improved. This, heaven's path. Divine art is too powerful. Zhang Xuan was taken aback. To break through Pigu realm, others have to continually nourish their body for at least a few years. However, he took less than 4 hours to break through the realm directly. Not only so, the quality of his Genki had also been refined. Exactly what kind of secret manual had the Library of Heaven's Path created? This was way too powerful. Let me test my strength. Upon breaking through Pigu realm, one would reach Fighter 5 Dan Dingley. The moment a cultivator steps into this realm, they will possess 1 ding of strength. He walked over to the strength measuring rock pillar, which was just a few dozen meters away from the dormitory. This kind of strength measuring rock pillar could be found around the academy so as to allow the students to measure their strength anytime and anywhere. Upon reaching Fighter 5 Dan Dingley, one would possess 1 ding of strength, which was around 1,000 kilograms. This kind of strength already exceeded the limits of an ordinary human and was on par with horses and bulls. After practicing the Heaven's Path divine art, Zhang Xuan's body had been reformed, and he had broken through the Pigu realm. This was an opportunity for him to test how much strength the possessed. Would it be like in the rumors that he would possess 1 ding of strength? Gathering and controlling his breath, the sole of the feet clutched onto the ground. Suddenly his knees sprang forth, and his entire body immediately took on the shape of a giant bow, while his arm burst forth from him like an arrow. Ping! His fist struck on the stone pillar and a glint of light flowed on it. 5 ding. A number appeared on it. How, is this possible? Zhang Xuan narrowed his eyes and a dumbfounded look covered his entire face. Is this for real? For a normal dingly primary stage, one would possess 1 ding of strength. In the intermediate stage, one would possess 2 ding of strength. In the advanced stage, 3 ding of strength, and in the pinnacle, 4 ding of strength. Yet, despite barely breaking through the Pigu realm to Dingli realm, he actually possessed 5 ding of strength. What was going on? Wasn't this too exaggerated? It must be due to the nourishment of my body by the Heaven's Path divine art and the superior zhenqi in my body. After a short moment, Zhang Xuan recovered from the shock and infers. He was very clear that he wasn't a genius. The only explanation for it was the Heaven's Path divine art, which he had just cultivated with. Not only did this cultivation technique tempered and reformed his physical body and cleansed his zhenqi, raising it to superior quality, it also increased his strength significantly, thus granting him the strength beyond that of Dingli Pinnacle Expert, despite just reaching the Dingli realm. Fearsome. There are only a few esteemed teachers in the academy who reached Fighter 5 Dan. In the academy, only some of the higher-level teachers possessed the strength of a Fighter 5 Dan Dingli realm. People like Cao Xiang and him could never hope to reach such heights. Now that I have reached this level, I should go and look for the cultivation technique for 5 Dan. While his strength soared rapidly, a problem arose. The multitude of 4 Dan cultivation techniques that he flipped through in the Teacher Compendium Pavilion previously were useless now. If he wanted to continue cultivating, he had to look for 5 Dan cultivation techniques. Right now it isn't too late. The Teacher Compendium Pavilion shouldn't be closed yet. Scratching his head, Zhang Xuan walked over the Compendium Pavilion once more. In order to prevent people from getting greedy and hasty in their training, the Academy imposed a rule that one could only view cultivation techniques that corresponded to the level of their cultivation. It didn't take long for Zhang Xuan to arrive at the Compendium Pavilion once more. Why are you here again? Seeing that it's the same guy from a moment ago, the custodian, Elder Mo, frowned. This impractical fellow just left the pavilion not long ago? Why was he back again? Elder Mo, I would like to view the cultivation technique for 5 Dan. Zhang Xuan was a little awkward. He couldn't possibly say that he broke through after leaving for just a short moment. If he were to say that, the other fellow would either kill him or kidnap him to examine him like a lab rat. There wasn't much of a change in zhenqi between Pigu realm and Dingli realm. As long as he didn't manipulate his zhenqi, it was difficult for even experts to tell the difference. Elder Mo might be strong, but it was inconceivable to him that this youth might have broken to greater heights in the short moment he was gone. 5 Dan cultivation technique? What do you want it for? Elder Mo's face darkened. His final sliver of appreciation towards his fellow disappeared. He didn't copy any notes on the 4 Dan cultivation technique and didn't try to cultivate it. Yet, he was back now to look at the 5 Dan? What kind of joke was this? Elder Mo, it is like this. Today, I accepted a student and his parent asked me some questions about 5 Dan cultivation. I was unable to answer it, causing him to look down on me. Thus, I would like to take a look and derive an answer to it. This way, I would be able to deal with these questions in the future. Zhang Xuan had already thought of an excuse beforehand. Some parents are indeed troublesome to deal with. Hearing this explanation, Elder Mo nodded his head. With a solemn expression, he said, "You can take a look, but do not cultivate them by any means. If you try to cultivate 5 Dan without even breaking through 4 Dan, even deities would be unable to save you when you go berserk." "Yes, I understand that," Zhang Xuan hurriedly replied. "All right, enter." Elder Mo waved his hand and closed his eyes. "The 5 Dan cultivation technique are on the very last row." "Yes," Zhang Xuan hurriedly entered. "Hypocritical! Vain!" After entering, Elder Mo added 2 more words to his evaluation of Zhang Xuan. "So what if the parents ask about it? You are the lowest level teacher. It is normal that you can't answer their questions. So, in order to put on a show, you specially came here to view the 5-Dan cultivation technique. If this isn't being hypocritical and vain, then what is? Tomorrow, I will look for the principal and have this unrealistic fellow expelled. Scoffing coldly in his heart, Old Mo's mind was resolute. Leaving such a vain fellow who doesn't cultivate properly in the academy will just sully the culture of the academy. Zhang Xuan didn't know that the 2 meetings with Elder Mo have placed him in the expulsion list of the latter. If he were to know, he would have no idea whether he should burst into laughter or weep in tears. Those words that he said were only excuses. In reality, his cultivation had reached such a level. He couldn't possibly stop training due to the lack of cultivation technique. Very quickly, he found the very last row of the cultivation technique section. Even the most famous and powerful teacher in the academy was Fighter 5-Dan. The moment one broke through into the 6-Dan Pixu realm, they would automatically become an elder in the academy. This was only the teacher compendium pavilion, so there weren't any records on the 6-Dan cultivation techniques. Thus, the 5-Dan cultivation techniques were placed on the very last shelf. There are significantly less 5-Dan manuals than 4-Dan. There were around 2,000 to 3,000 cultivation technique secret manuals on the 4th Dan, whereas there were only 1,000 on the 5th Dan. However, it was also a natural occurrence when one thought about it. No matter what it was, the higher one climbed, the scarcer the resources. Although the academy had been present for a long time, there were definitely significantly less 5-Dan than 4-Dan in its entire history. As a result, the cultivation techniques and notes they left behind would be fewer as well. Shaking his head, he decided not to contemplate over such matters. Zhang Xuan casually took out a book and flipped through it. Around an hour later, the 1,000 cultivation technique secret manuals have been browsed through, and the Library of Heaven's Path had compiled corresponding books to the secret manuals. After receiving what he wanted, Zhang Xuan smiled faintly and bade Elder Mo farewell before walking into the distance. Seeing how he was randomly flipping and viewing the books, not even stopping in the midst of it, Elder Mo couldn't help but chastise him yet again in his mind. Returning back to his living quarters, Zhang Xuan followed what he did previously and searched for the correct phrases and paragraphs within the 1,000 books. As he expected, not too long later, the library compiled the 1,000 books into a single one. This time, the book wasn't nameless, and the 4 big words, Heaven's Path Divine Art, was written on it. He started to cultivate again. Fighter 5-Dan Dingli realm was an extension of the Pigu realm. The purpose of this realm was simple. It was to temper the Genki of the cultivator to his body. The difference in strength between each stage in Dingli realm was mainly due to the level of compatibility between one's Genki and their body. The greater their compatibility, the more strength one was able to exert. Reading the cultivation method for the Dingli realm in the Heaven's Path Divine Art, Zhang Xuan focused his attention. He carefully controlled the crystal-clear Genki in his Dantian to slowly flow in his body, going at a fixed rhythm to allow it to merge completely with his body. The Heaven's Path Divine Art was indeed worthy of being a cultivation technique compiled by the advantages of over a few thousand secret manuals. The efficiency of the cultivation method was indeed one to behold. His Genki and muscles swiftly merged together as one. The strength of his body and the compatibility of his Genki soared up exponentially. Dingli Realm Primary Stage, Dingli Realm Intermediate Stage, Dingli Realm Advanced Stage, Dingli Realm Pinnacle. Boom! After 4 hours, his body jolted again. Zhang Xuan reopened his eyes. His eyes were filled with disbelief. This Fighter 5-Dan Pinnacle? Initially, he thought he would take a long period cultivating in 5-Dan. Never in his dreams would he possibly imagine that he could reach the pinnacle in 4 hours through the Heaven's Path Divine Art. To his previous self, cultivation was as difficult as trying to ascend the heavens. Yet, to Zhang Xuan, who was practicing the Heaven's Path Divine Art, it was as easy as eating and drinking. Just by half a night worth of effort, he rose from Fighter 3 Dan Genki Realm to Fighter 5 Dan Dingli Realm Pinnacle. This was too exaggerated. Furthermore, if it wasn't for the fact that he didn't know the cultivation method for 6 Dan, unaware of which acupoint he should break through, he might have already successfully broken through to become a 6 Dan Pixu Realm expert. In the 6 Dan Pixu Realm, one would open up all of the blocked acupoints in their body. For every acupoint broken through, one's Genki would become richer, and one's prowess will rise. It was said that there are 108 acupoints in the human body. However, only 72 of these could be opened, and there was an order to opening it. Everyone's body was different, thus everyone would require a different sequence in breaking through each of them to obtain the best results out of it. If one was unable to find the correct sequence, they could very possibly end up only opening 3 to 4 acupoints and be stuck there for the rest of their lives. This was just like cleaning the silt by a river. It had to be cleaned gradually from the upper stream to the lower stream. If one were to start at the center and clean towards the upper and lower stream, not only would the river not be cleaned thoroughly, it might even result in a blockage, causing one to be unable to progress further. The same logic went for breaking through one's acupoints as well. If one didn't find the ideal sequence, the other acupoints might get blocked, and for the rest of their lives, they would be unable to open it. Thus, without a cultivation technique, Zhang Xuan didn't dare to try to cultivate further. However, he wasn't anxious. It was already unheard of to break through 2 great realms in a single night. He was already very satisfied with the results. Unless required, it is best for me not to reveal my level of cultivation. As a transcender, he had read many books and watched many shows. He knew that possessing a treasure itself was a crime. He was the worst teacher in the entire academy. Yet, in a night, he suddenly gained the strength of a Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle. If others were to find out, wouldn't they all rush to him? Thus, it was best for him to not tell anyone about him reaching Dingli Realm Pinnacle. The more confidential it was, the better it was for him. Let me see how much strength would I hold this time. After making a decision, Zhang Xuan walked over to the strength-measuring rock pillar. While other people only possessed 1 ding of strength in their Dingli primary stage, he possessed 5 ding. If so, how much strength would he hold now that he had reached the pinnacle? Peng! Light flowed through the rock pillar, and numbers appeared on it. 8 ding! 8 ding of strength? That is almost the strength of a Pixu Realm expert who has opened up 4 acupoints. Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. A normal Dingli Pinnacle cultivator would possess 4 ding of strength, after which, for each acupoint they broke through, their strength would increase by 1 ding. Despite just being at Dingli Pinnacle, he possessed the strength of 8 ding, putting him on the same level as an expert who had broken through 4 acupoints. As expected of the Heaven's Path divine art, incredible. Zhang Xuan was quite happy. After training for such a long period of time, he intended to find something to eat, then go to sleep. However, his ears suddenly twitched. Why would someone be here at such a time? Zhang Xuan frowned. Due to an advancement in his cultivation, his hearing and sight have improved tremendously. He was able to clearly perceive the sound of someone hiding somewhere not too far from where he was, staring fixedly at his living quarters. Looks like he is surveying my room. He probably has yet to detect my presence. At this moment, Zhang Xuan wasn't at his room but behind a strength-measuring rock pillar, which was a distance away from the dormitory. After measuring his strength, he had been suppressing his breathing. Thus, the other party had yet to notice his presence. Let's see who's the one finding trouble with me. He didn't expect that someone would want to deal with him right after he was done cultivating. The doubts in his mind grew. Rummaging through the memories of his previous self, although he didn't have much accomplishment, there hadn't been a scenario where someone sneaked onto in the night to deal with him. No matter who he is, I mustn't let him identify me. Just when he was about to meet the other party, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. The entire academy knew that he is a Fighter 3 Dan Genki Realm trash. If he were to appear at this moment as a 5-Dan pinnacle, the other party would definitely be scared to death. Furthermore, if the news were to spread out, there would surely be quite a few persons who would look into him. Thus, no matter who the other party was, Zhang Xuan mustn't allow him to identify him. At this moment, he suddenly recalled the numerous movies he had watched back in his previous life. Thus, he tore away a fabric from his sleeves and covered his face. After finishing with his preparations, making use of the darkness of the night, Zhang Xuan gradually crept towards the other party with light footsteps. Although he had just broken through and he had never studied any footwork, the cultivation technique he was training with was the Heaven's Path Divine Art, which granted him superb control over his body. Not to mention, he was also very familiar with his surroundings, so the other party didn't notice him even when he was just 10 meters behind him. At such a proximity, he could clearly see the black suit donned by the other party. His face was also covered, so it was impossible for him to make out his identity as well. Lad, if you must blame it for your daring guts to dare to lay your hands on our young mistress. Hiding behind a large tree, Zhang Xuan stared at the silhouette before him as the mutterings of the latter vaguely drifted to his ears. That voice sounds familiar. Zhang Xuan's eyebrows knitted tightly together. Zhang Xuan was sure that he had heard this voice before. However, he had difficulty recalling exactly when and where he heard it. Just as he was trying his best to recall whether it is the memory of his previous self or after he had transcended, the silhouette before him flickered and gradually moved towards his dormitory. At the same time, with a flick of his wrist, a cold gleam shone and a sharp dagger appeared on his palm. You want to kill me? Seeing the other party whipping out a knife, Zhang Xuan raised his eyebrows. It was fortunate that he had been cultivating and not sleeping. Otherwise, when the other party approached him silently like this, wouldn't he be killed for sure? Let me first ascertain who this fellow is. Zhang Xuan knew that conducting this kind of night assault would mean that he was not an individual. Perhaps there could even be an organization behind him. If he didn't accurately identify the one trying to murder him, even if he were to kill this assassin, there might be more coming for his life in the future. If he didn't dig out the organization behind the assassination, he wouldn't have to dream of sleeping peacefully anymore. Who is it? Just when Zhang Xuan was pondering how he should force the man before him to confess the organization backing him, he heard a hushed voice. Unknowingly, the black-clothed man grasping the dagger was already standing at proximity to him. Zhang Xuan had never tracked anyone before. Upon seeing the other party whip out a dagger, he got nervous for a moment and leaked out his breath, causing the other party to notice his presence. To be noticed so quickly, Zhang Xuan frowned. Just when he was about to rush forward to duel with the man before him, a thought flashed through his mind and a brilliant idea popped out. I am here to kill Zhang Xuan, that useless teacher. Who are you? Suppressing his tone so as to not be identified, Zhang Xuan declared. Since the other party was here to kill him, he would be able to confuse him by saying that he was here for the same purpose. You're here to kill him? The black-clothed man was taken aback. However, looking at how Zhang Xuan concealed his face and his sneaky attitude, he couldn't help but trust his words slightly. Indeed, the academy's worst teacher will only bring harm to the students if left alone. Zhang Xuan couldn't help but turn red upon talking about himself. Oh, then you do it. I will help you keep a lookout, the black-clothed man said. Kang? An uncomprehending look appeared on Zhang Xuan. He tried to push the responsibility to him. I think it would be better for you to do it. Anyway, we are here for the same motive, so it doesn't matter who does it. You do it. Actually, I have no intentions of killing him. I only wanted to punish him. However, if he were to die, that would be for the best. The black-clothed man urged him on. Punish him? Zhang Xuan was a little confused. Punish him? Then why was he holding a dagger? He couldn't resist asking, How do you want to punish him? Humph. That fellow dares to do something disrespectful to our young mistress. I intend to chop off his thing and turn him into a eunuch, the black-clothed man proclaimed furiously. Hearing those words filled with vile intentions, Zhang Xuan could only feel a breeze at his crotch and shivered unconsciously in fear. The hell! If I were to sleep peacefully tonight, I would probably be qualified to serve the emperor after this. Who the hell are you, for you to be so vicious, disrespectful to your young mistress? Zhang Xuan tried to recall the memories of his previous self and after his reincarnation, but he didn't seem to have gotten into any physical relationships with any young mistresses. That Zhang Xuan, I have only heard that he is unqualified as a teacher. I have never heard of him bullying females. What is this about? Zhang Xuan couldn't resist asking. That fellow is an animal with a human skin. What teacher? He is a beast. Our young mistress. Forget it. The more I think about it, the more furious I get. Untold rage could be felt from the suppressed voice of the black-clothed man. Zhang Xuan could only see stars. So what the hell is it about? For you to insult me as a beast? What did I do to your young mistress? Besides that, who the hell is your young mistress? It is one thing if she is pretty, but if she is ugly, isn't it too much for such a reputation to be forced on me? Why do you want to kill him? After his insults, the black-clothed man looked over. Me? Zhang Xuan didn't expect that the other party would question him. He was stunned for a moment before clenching his jaw and answering, I can't accept his actions of bullying women. You know that he bullies women? Who did he bully? The black-clothed man was alarmed. Zhang Xuan harumphed and said, There is no reason for me to answer your questions. That is true. Since we both have the same goals in mind, you go first. Seeing that the other party was unwilling to reveal anything, although there were doubts in his mind, he chose to ask no further and waved his hand to gesture Zhang Xuan to go ahead. It would be better if you go first. If I were to strike first, he would be dead before you can castrate him. It would be better for you to castrate him first before I kill him, Zhang Xuan replied. The black-clothed man started to hesitate. He looked at Zhang Xuan in doubt. He started to get suspicious. How could it be possible for such a coincidence to occur? Just when he intended to castrate Zhang Xuan, another person appeared to assassinate him. If it wasn't for his fear of the strength of the other party, he would have struck him unconscious by now. Why? You don't trust me? If I don't want to kill him, why would I sneak here in the middle of the night? Noticing his doubts, Zhang Xuan tried to dispel them. Hearing those words, the black-clothed man hesitated for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. That's true. It is already late at night. If the masked man isn't here to kill Zhang Xuan, why would he be here for? It isn't because I don't trust you. Since our goals align with one another, let's go together, the black-clothed man replied after pondering for a moment. He was still a little suspicious of the fellow in front of him. You are still way too careful. Rest easy. I have basic principles as a human. However, since you do not trust me, Zhang Xuan didn't drag on the conversation and gestured, Let's go together. After which he charged forward. Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle? Seeing his movement, the black-clothed man instantly identified his level of cultivation. He exerted his Qinggong Wen and followed closely behind. Seeing the black-clothed man following behind him, Zhang Xuan immediately turned around to take a look. Boom! The Library of Heaven's path jolted and a book appeared. The skill the other party exerted to follow him was equal to executing a battle technique. As long as one were to use a skill, the Library of Heaven's path would be able to compile a book on his flaws, and thus, his background would be revealed. Zhang Xuan glanced at the book. He only saw 2 words, Yao Han, written on the cover. This name sounds so familiar. Where have I heard of it? Zhang Xuan stared at the front cover for a moment before flipping over to the first page. Yao Han, the butler of Bayou City Lord Residence. Fighter 6 Dan picks you, primary stage, 8 acupoints opened. It's him. Seeing the words Bayou City, Zhang Xuan immediately recalled the identity of the man before him. Wasn't this the butler from Bayou City who rushed over to threaten him when he accepted Zhao Ya as his student? No wonder his voice and name sound so familiar. Just that. This means that the young mistress that he mentioned refers to Zhao Ya. What did I do to her for you to make the journey here just to castrate me? To dare malign me? Even though you are stronger than me, I must teach you a lesson. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. If it was something his previous self did, since he had transcended over to take his place, even though he would feel wronged, he would admit it. However, the crux was that he didn't do anything. For Yao Han to label him with this crime when he did nothing, he was simply too vile. As such thoughts raced through his mind, he continued to glance through the list. Cultivation technique, white jade circulation technique. Battle techniques, mystical diagram. Palm, expert. Mystical diagram fist, expert. Flaws, 16 aspects. No. 1. His Mingmen is at his bottoms and his skills are unable to guard against attacks directed at the point. No. 2. No. 3. Just as how it did previously, the book recorded all the flaws on this fellow. Having broken through 8 acupoints, this meant his current strength is at 12 ding. If Zhang Xuan were to try to match him in a direct combat, he would definitely not be a match for him. However, so what if you are in Pixu realm? So what if you possess 12 ding of strength? If I don't teach you a lesson today, I wouldn't be called Zhang Xuan. At this point, Zhang Xuan stopped abruptly. What's wrong? Seeing Zhang Xuan stopping abruptly, the black-clothed man asked with a confused look. Look! An UFO! Zhang Xuan casually pointed. UFO! What is an UFO? The black-clothed man was taken aback and hurriedly turned around to take a look. This action revealed the Ming-men on his bottom to Zhang Xuan. Incomprehension plagued Yao Han. He knew of butterfly, ultimatum, and spy. However, what exactly was an UFO? TL note? Butterfly. Hudai. Ultimatum. Tongdai. Spy. Jiandai, UFO, flying saucer. Feidai. Dai is pronounced as dia. Go to hell. What Zhang Xuan had been waiting for was this opportunity. Without any hesitation whatsoever, he sent a kick filled with his wrath towards his bottom. Peng! Before the black-clothed man Yao Han could react, his Mingmen was kicked on. He flew forward and crashed head-on with a boulder not too far away. Blood trickled down from the wound on his head. Since you are here to castrate me, should I castrate you right now? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Zhang Xuan rushed forward and sat on the other party's body. He sent a couple of fists onto his face. What Pixu realm expert? What 12 ding expert? They are strong? If you were to find their Mingmen and exploit their flaws, an unexpected assault will still lead to their deaths. Apparently, Yao Han didn't expect the fellow who wanted to teach Zhang Xuan a lesson along with him would suddenly attack him frenziedly. What's worse, his Ming-men was struck, causing his entire body to go stiff. He couldn't retaliate even if he wanted to. His body shivered from anger. Didn't we agree to deal with Zhang Xuan together? The heck, where is your trust? Where are your basic principles as a human? Besides, no matter what, you are a Fighter 5 Dan Dingley Pinnacle Master, an expert among experts. You should have some demeanor even in the midst of a battle. To shamelessly lie to me and launch a secret assault before riding on my face. What about battle techniques? What about crossing blows? What about your cultivation technique? Even gangsters on the street don't fight this way. He only felt wave after wave of pain on his face. Yao Han was about to go insane. At this moment, he finally knew that he had been scammed by the masked man. Furthermore, it was the worst kind of scams. Qinggong, literally translated as the art of lightweight. It refers to footwork, which allows one to tread lightly, increasing one's jumping ability, running speed, and dodging skills. After a violent thrashing, Zhang Xuan finally felt the rage in his heart subsiding slightly. Lowering his head to take a look, Yao Han's mask had already fallen off in the midst of the bashing, and his face was warped from taking his hits. Probably, even his own mother would be unable to recognize him in his current state. Kang? Now that anger was no longer clouding his mind, Zhang Xuan immediately grasped his current situation. This fellow is the butler of Baiyu City Lord, as well as the uncle of my disciple. It is still okay for me to teach him a lesson, but I should not kill him by any means. No matter what, this fellow was still Zhao Ya's uncle Yao. If Zhang Xuan were to really kill him, wouldn't the disciple he just admitted go to waste? There would surely be zero possibility for reconciliation if that were to happen. Besides, Baiyu City was reputed as the third biggest city in Tianshuan Kingdom. To be able to become the city lord of such a city, Zhao Ya's father should be rather powerful and holds great influence. If his butler was killed and he chose to pursue this matter, it might be possible for him to investigate onto himself. If so, he would be in deep trouble. Being a newcomer in this world, he had yet to create a firm foothold for him to stand on, so it was best for him to keep a low profile. I mustn't let me become suspicious of me. The thought flashed through his mind. Since Yao Han couldn't be killed, then Zhang Xuan have to let him go alive. For him to get beaten him in the midst of an assault against Zhang Xuan would definitely be the first person he would be suspicious of. Oh, right. I have the perfect scapegoat for this. If he didn't come looking for trouble today, I wouldn't have thought of him. A person flashed through Zhang Xuan's mind. That person was the man who was beside Shen Bi. Ru earlier today, the one who kept mocking him, Shang Bin. Anyway, that fellow was the grandson of Elder Shang Chen. If Zhang Xuan were to push the blame to him, Yao Han wouldn't dare to take revenge even if he wanted to. In fact, it would be better if Yao Han were to take revenge. The two of them would then bite viciously onto one another. At this point, Zhang Xuan stared at the distorted face of Yao Han and deepened his voice. I have a grudge with Zhang Xuan. Earlier today, he got on my nerves, and so I intended to teach him a lesson in the night. However, if he were to be castrated by you, she would definitely suspect that I am the one who did it, and a misunderstanding would arise between us. Blame this all on the fact that you met me today, as well as your untimely arrival. Only now did Yao Han know why he was thrashed. He wanted to retort, but his mouth was swollen like a pair of sausages, making it impossible for him to talk. Scram! Seeing that the other party has comprehended his words, Zhang Xuan didn't continue speaking. He stood up and kicked Yao Han's body a dozen meters away. Damn it! Hurling vulgarities towards the other party in his mind, Yao Han knew that he was in a disadvantageous situation today. Gritting his teeth, he turned away and left. At the same time, he carved the two main characteristics of the attacker onto his mind. Firstly, the person who beat him up had an encounter with Zhang Xuan earlier in the day and was incensed by his words or actions. Secondly, the relationship between him and Zhang Xuan should be love rivals. The woman who they were pursuing had a B in her name. As long as he remembered these two distinctive features, it was an easy task for him to find out who the fellow who laid his hands on him was. Only after seeing Yao Han disappear into the distance did Zhang Xuan heave a sigh of relief. He patted away the dirt on his clothes and returned back to the dormitory. This event was a great fright to him. If he didn't stay up to cultivate tonight, it would be hard to tell what would have happened. However, at least the danger was averted temporarily. The key to survival in this world. Sitting on the bed in his dormitory, Zhang Xuan muttered to himself. If his cultivation didn't soar today, even if he knew Yao Han's weaknesses, he wouldn't have been a match for him. The one to suffer in the end would be him. Thus, the urgent matter at hand was for him to swiftly raise his strength. The stronger he was, the better it was. He slowly drifted into the world of dream with his mind filled with sentimentality. The next day, Zhang Xuan woke up the moment the sky lit up. Although he had barely slept for 2 hours, not to mention how hard he had worked the previous night, he still felt refreshed without the slightest fatigue. "Time to start lessons," he muttered as he put on his clothes. After which, he walked to his classroom with large strides. It didn't take long for him to arrive at his classroom. The moment he pushed the door open, a plump youth welcomed him enthusiastically. "Zhang Laoshi, you are here. Look, I have already finished cleaning up the room." He was the final student Zhang Xuan accepted yesterday, the fatty Yuan Tao. Zhang Xuan didn't expect that this fellow would be the first to arrive, given how he threatened him yesterday. Furthermore, he even cleaned the classroom spick and span. "Not bad." Zhang Xuan nodded his head in approval. "Heh, since teacher said that I did not bad, is there any reward for my effort? Like some martial art or cultivation technique and such. You can casually reward me with 3 or 5 of them." Hearing Zhang Xuan's acknowledgement, a wide smile appeared on Fatty's face. This fellow was the type who would go too far when you give him some leeway. "Wait by the side first. I will start the lesson after the other students arrive." Zhang Xuan gestured. The first to arrive was Fatty. Unexpectedly, the second to arrive was the student whom he won from the bet, Liu Yang. However, Liu Yang's attitude wasn't as good as Fatty's. Indignation spelled on his face as he gazed at Zhang Xuan with a look of contempt. In his opinion, Zhang Xuan only won the bet by luck, and it was a torture for a genius like him to come under the tutelage of a teacher of such horrendous standards. The third to arrive was the youth who specializes in the way of the spear, Zheng Yang. After Zhang Xuan pointed out the problem in Zheng Yang's spear, his strength rose by more than a single fold. As a result, Zheng Yang held great confidence towards his teacher, and out of the current few students who acknowledged Zhang Xuan, he was the only one who came to him on his own free will. The fourth to arrive was Wang Ying. The shy lass couldn't help but blush upon catching sight of the other students when she entered and immediately hid at the corner. "I should be able to solve the problem of my body today." Zhaoya opened her eyes. Yesterday, the academy's worst teacher claimed that he was capable of solving her problem. After returning to her dormitory, she felt lost and worried, causing her to roll about her bed, only falling asleep after a long time later. Regardless of whether the other party is telling the truth or lying, there would surely be a conclusion by the end of today. When such thoughts struck her, she gargled her mouth, put on her clothes, and left the room swiftly. As the daughter of Baiyu City Lord and one of the top 10 scorers of the entrance examinations, she was granted a personal residence, unlike the shared dormitory of the other students. There were many rooms in the residence, and the butler, Uncle Yao, stayed in one of the rooms not too far away from hers. "Uncle Yao, I'm going to class!" Seeing no movements in the room after shouting, Zhao Ya prepared to walk off. "Young mistress, wait for me. I will go with you." A shout echoed from beyond the door. The door opened and Yao Han walked out. Looking at his face, Zhao Ya was taken aback. "Uncle Yao, you... What happened?" Zhao Ya was stunned to see Yao Han's swollen face and the dark rings around his eyes. In a single night, the dignified Yao Han had been disfigured. If it wasn't for the familiar voice, she wouldn't have known who he was. "Oh, I accidentally hit myself after getting too absorbed in my training yesterday," Johan explained. Who would hit themselves in the midst of their training? Is it possible for anyone to find an even worse excuse than that? "Uncle Yao, what happened? Who did it?" "No, I have to tell my dad," Zhaoya exclaimed furiously. "Young mistress, don't bother yourself with this. This is my own problem. I can resolve it myself." You better hurry to your class first. I want to see how the teacher you acknowledged is like. If his standards are exactly like what the rumors dictate, I will immediately report this to the city lord and have the Hongtian Academy get a new teacher for you." Yao Han waved his hand imposingly. However, as his movements were too big, his wounds were pulled on and cold sweat drenches his back. "Fine." Seeing how adamant Yao Han was against her interference in the matter, Zhao Ya didn't touch any further on the subject. The two of them walked towards Zhang Xuan's classroom. "Uncle Yao, given how severely wounded you are, I think you should go back and rest first. I can attend the lesson by myself. There is no need for you to send me." After walking a short distance, Zhao Ya noticed how his entire body was trembling and drenched in sweat. She couldn't help but say these words. Yesterday, Zhang Xuan didn't pull back his blows even in the least. Despite applying medicine on the wounds and resting for a few hours, his wounds were still severe. It was quite incredible that he was even able to walk. "Young mistress, the city lord has tasked me to find a good teacher for you before we set off. Yet, you had to choose such a fellow." "How can I face the city lord in the future?" Yao Han said. "No matter what, I want to expose the true face of that fellow before you and prove to you that he is a fraud. Only our pure and innocent young mistress would fall for his tricks. Given those standards of his, it is impossible for him to recruit a second student. When you finally witness that there are no other students in his class, you would know that..." Jia! The door to the classroom was pushed open, revealing its interior. Within the classroom sat Zhang Xuan and his 4 new students. After hearing that the young mistress had acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her master, Yao Han rushed here furiously, oblivious to the fact that Zhang Xuan had already accepted several students. He had just let out word that the other party would be unable to recruit a second student other than the young mistress, but in the next moment, he met Wang Ying and the rest. He felt as though he was slapped in the face in public. His face immediately darkened. "Teacher!" Zhao Ya also felt a burning sensation on her face, and she felt tempted to find a burrow to hide in. "You are all right?" A short moment later, Yao Han recovered and stared in confusion at Zhang Xuan. That fellow yesterday was so brutal to him, so he thought that even if Zhang Xuan wasn't reduced to a pig head, he would at the very least be crippled. So why did he seem to be fully intact, to the point of being unable to find even a single scratch on his skin? Actually, even though he said that he wanted to assess Zhang Xuan's standards as a teacher, his true purpose was to see his pathetic state after getting thrashed by the mysterious man. Yet, in the end, as a Fighter 6 Dan Pixu realm expert, he went to assault him yet ended up getting beaten up while the one who he intended to assault wasn't even wounded in the least. He feels as though he had lost greatly, and he found it unacceptable. "Why wouldn't I be all right?" Zhang Xuan knew what Yao Han is thinking, but he replied with a stoic expression. He looked towards Zhao Ya and asked, "This disabled person is..." "Disabled person?" A peculiar expression appeared on Zhao Ya's face. Before she could speak, a voice interrupted her. "You are the one who is disabled." Yao Han suppressed the urge to vomit blood. His eyebrows shot upwards, and he flung the sleeves of his robe. "I am the butler of Baiyu City Lord Residence, Yao Han." "Oh, since you are disabled, you shouldn't be walking around here. Otherwise, if you were to die here, it would be difficult for me to explain." As though not hearing his words, Zhang Xuan gestured to the door. "Send off our guest and shut the door!" "You..." Yao Han clenched his fist furiously and almost exploded on the spot. Who was he? The butler of Baiyu City Lord Residence. He possessed great authority. In the Hongtian Academy, even the executive of the Education Bureau would have to give in to him. Yet, a teacher like Zhang Xuan dared to say that he was disabled and even tried to throw him out. How could it be possible for him to not be angry? "I want to see how you are going to teach them." Putting his hands behind him, Yao Han stood upright proudly. "Oh, since you know that you have to leave, make it fast. We need to maintain a silent atmosphere when teaching the students, so we don't just allow any cats and dogs in our classrooms. Zhang Xuan seemed to be on a different frequency as him. As though hearing nothing at all, he gestured towards the exit yet again. Who are you calling cat and dog? The rage burned with him, and blood flowed out from his wounds. Yao Han trembled uncontrollably. Do you think that I wouldn't dare to kill you with a palm of mine right now? Zhaoya, send him out so that I can solve your problem. Couldn't be bothered to argue with the other party. Zhang Xuan signaled to Zhaoya. Uncle Yao, please, leave for the moment. I am about to start lessons. Hearing those words, Zhaoya's eyes lit up. I am not leaving. I want this fellow to clarify who he is talking about. I, Yao Han, a Fighter 6 Dan Pixu realm expert, is respected wherever I go. Who dares to say that I am crippled, even trying to drive me out? Before he could finish his words, Zhao Ya pushed him out. The next moment, the sight before him turned dark as the door closed on him. If he didn't dodge fast enough, he would have been smacked by the door. Young mistress... Standing outside the door, Yao Han frowned and his face twitched. If he was driven out by Zhang Xuan, he would surely retaliate. However, since it was the young mistress who drove him out, he wouldn't dare to lay his hands on her, even if he was beaten to death. Even so, he directed all the resentment he had accumulated onto Zhang Xuan. He was unable to understand what capabilities the fellow possessed, to be capable of deluding the young mistress to such an extent. Uncle Yao, I'm sorry to bother you to wait outside. We are going to start lessons. Zhaoya knew about her own problem. Her own illness must not be revealed to anyone, especially to Uncle Yao. If her teacher was going to help her solve her problem, she would naturally have to drive him away. Fine, young mistress. I will be waiting outside. If anything happens, call me, and I will rush in immediately. Hearing the words of the young mistress, Yao Han knew that he would be unable to enter. He was on the verge of erupting, but without a choice, he could only grit his teeth and bear with it. After Yao Han left, only Zhang Xuan's 5 newly accepted students and him remained in the room, the ITU. Jangson surveyed the surrounding. Since all of you have acknowledged me as your teacher, you all would be fellow peers. Make sure to take good care of one another so as to not sully my prestige. Prestige? Hearing this word, the 5 students stared at one another. Teacher, you don't seem to have any prestige? Cough, cough. Even if we wanted to sully it, there is nothing there to sully. My way to teaching is slightly different from the others. I pay particular importance to cater teachings to the student's personal condition. The way to guiding everyone is different. Thus, there is nothing to compare between you all. Zhang Xuan seemed oblivious to the expressions of his students and put on the airs of a teacher. Right now, I will go to the little room by the side. When I call your name, enter the little room. Zhang Xuan's classroom wasn't big, around 100 square meters. Even so, there was a partition in which the teacher was able to give specific guidance to a student. These 5 students were different from one another. If he were to guide them together as a whole, it would be troublesome and highly ineffective. Wang Ying, you are my first student, come in. After which, Zhang Xuan led the way into the small room. Yes. Given Wang Ying's obedient nature, she didn't dare to retort and walked closely behind him. Wang Ying felt a little regretful. Yesterday, she got lost and came over to ask for directions. Yet, she was scammed into acknowledging this teacher as her mentor. Initially, she didn't know what was going on, but after thinking through it, this teacher didn't seem to be truly capable. Other teachers were able to tell the problem with her leg through her punching routine. However, not only was this fellow unable to tell, he even bragged about being able to cure the injury on her leg. For this injury, her father even found the most famous of physicians, but it was to no avail. Even so, the man before her claimed that he was able to treat her. If this wasn't a scam, what could this be? Furthermore, Liu Laoshi told her many things regarding this teacher. Only then did she realize that this teacher had such a radiant background. The first teacher to score a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, and the weakest in terms of strength among the teachers. Why was she so unfortunate to be scammed by him and to believe his words? No wonder Big Brother said that there are many bad guys outside. When her elder brother told her that there were untrustworthy people outside, she didn't believe him. Now, looking at the teacher before her, she felt wronged, that she had been lied to, just as she was thinking about how she should withdraw from the lessons of this teacher, that at most it would simply end with a scolding, and she could find her elder brother to help her find another teacher. She heard a familiar voice sounding out. "Display your battle technique once more." Zhang Xuan sat at the center of the room and looked over with a calm expression. The previous time, when he tried to coax Wang Ying into joining him, the Library of Heaven's Path wasn't activated yet, so he still had no idea what flaws Wang Ying had. All right. Although Wang Ying was tempted to withdraw from the lessons, she nodded her head after hesitating for a moment. Once again, her fists generated gusts of wind, and soon, her punching routine came to an end. Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Although Wang Ying's character might be a little dense, her punching routine was quite satisfactory. Teacher, actually, I want to... Wang Ying wavered for a moment, and just when she was about to express her intention to withdraw from Zhang Xuan's lesson, the young man opposite of her spoke. If I'm not wrong, your leg was probably struck by someone during a duel 2 years ago, Zhang Xuan said. How did you know? Wang Ying was taken aback. Her words jammed in her mouth as her beautiful eyes widened in circles. She only talked about the injury on her leg yesterday, and not the origin of it. She didn't expect the other party to be capable of telling that it was an injury from someone's blow and even the time of the injury. She couldn't help but be shocked. There are 3 acupoints on a person's leg, and individually they govern strength, speed, and dexterity. When you battled with someone else, the other party accidentally struck the acupoint which governs strength. When this acupoint is struck, it closes, resulting in your blood to flow in reverse, thus preventing you from exerting strength on it like any other normal person, Zhang Xuan stated calmly. Wang Ying's body trembled. Her face flushed completely red. For her leg, Wang Ying's father had invited all of the renowned doctors in the kingdom, including the famous Master Yuan Yu. He seemed to have spoken similar words, but even he was unable to identify where the acupoint which governs strength is, thus he was unable to treat her. If she wanted to be treated once and for all, she had to invite a fighter 8-dan Zongxi realm master who possessed superior zhenqi to treat her. Otherwise, it was impossible for the treatment to succeed. Initially, she thought that this teacher who claimed that he would be able to treat her leg was just trying to coax her to come under his tutelage. Yet, she didn't expect that he would say the exact same words as what Master Yuanyu said, so how could she not be shocked? Teacher, are you able to treat me? Wang Ying couldn't resist asking. It is just a small matter, Zhang Xuan replied her question blandly. A small matter? Wang Ying's eyes narrowed as her breathing quickened. Even though she had no problem walking normally with her leg injury, she faced great difficulty in her training. It felt as though poison had soaked into her bones. In the past half year, there didn't seem to be a single day she spent in happiness. Precisely so, she became the current her who was a little fearful towards strangers, as well as reticent. Initially, she thought that her injury would stay with her for her entire life. Yet, she didn't expect that the Zhangshuan Laoshi, whom everyone thought was trash, would say, "It is a small matter." She found it hard to believe what her ears were hearing. If it was a moment ago, she might have thought that Zhang Xuan was simply bragging. However, from the instant he pointed out the reason behind her injury, expectations started to well up in her. The reason why I had you to come into this room individually is to treat you. All right, relax your entire body. Zhang Xuan retrieved a medium-sized jade box from the room and opened it gently. Within it lied numerous silver needles of different lengths. During the training sessions of a martial artist, it was easy for one to incur injuries. Thus, the academy prepared a kit of such in every single classroom to help boost the blood circulation of the wounded, as well as to temporarily ease the injury. Yes. Wang Ying listened to the voice of the young man, which was steadfast, confident, but without a trace of arrogant, and replied. Somehow Wang Ying trusted the man before her from the depths of her heart, and her tense body relaxed. Su. Sitting on his original spot without moving, he grabbed a silver needle and flicked it over. A soft sound, and the silver needle he infused with Zhenqi shot tautly towards Wang Ying and pierced her leg. This is Zephyr acupuncture? Wang Ying widened her eyes as her slim body trembled yet again. Zephyr acupuncture. It was a method which made use of a martial artist's control over his strength to control the pathway of the silver needles to pierce the correct spots without coming into contact with the patient's body. In this way, a male physician would be able to apply acupuncture without coming into proximity to a female patient. This way, awkwardness between the two was able to be avoided. Such a method of practicing acupuncture might seem simple, but it was actually incredibly complicated. Firstly, it required the martial artist to hold absolute control over his strength. If there was a slight imprecision, there was a high possibility that it would result in failure. Furthermore, one's eyes must be sharp. It was difficult to recognize the exact acupoints beneath the patient's clothes. If the physician were to recognize the acupuncture inaccurately, all kind of troubles could happen. Master Yuan Yu had once said that one must at least attain the cultivation level of Fighter 5 Dan Dingley realm to practice Zephyr acupuncture. Had the teacher termed as trash in the academy reached such a level? Impossible. Those who have reached Dingley realm were all famous figures in the academy, such as the famous teacher Lu Xun. According to Liu Laoshi, Zhangshuan Laoshi was only a Fighter 3rd Dan Genki realm. There was still a huge way to go before he reached 5 Dan Dingley realm. A Fighter 3 Dan Genki realm was capable of executing Zephyr acupuncture? She found it unbelievable. Su. While she was still in a state of disbelief, the young man flicked a few more silver needles towards her. A few gusts of wind whipped up, and the silver needles pierced into her leg with the exact same depth. This showed that the other party had already reached a rather advanced level of his control over his strength. The silver needle pierced into the flesh of her leg. Just as Wang Ying was about to ask Zhang Xuan how he intended to treat her, his hand slid past the needle, and the Zhenqi that was contained in the needle activated and probed into her body. Ah! As the Zhenqi entered her body, she felt a tingling sensation in her leg. The acupoint, which was sealed previously, immediately opened under the surge of the Zhenqi. This is superior? Zhenqi? As the tingling sensation spread across her entire body, Wang Ying clearly saw the look of the Zhenqi in her body. Clear like water, deprived of any impurities. This is the quality that only superior Zhenkai would possess. Superior Zhenkai. That is something that can only be cultivated if one possesses a god or saint cultivation technique. In the entire Tianshuan kingdom, it is unheard of for anyone to cultivate superior Zhenkai. Yet, to think the lousiest teacher in the academy possessed it? It can't be that I am seeing things. Done. While she was still overwhelmed by shock, her body relaxed completely and slumped. By then, the silver needles had already been retrieved by the other party. Following which, Wang Ying felt a surge of relaxation in her leg, a comfortable sensation which she had never experienced. After her injury, although she was still able to move normally, her legs felt as though they have been plastered, plagued with a stiff sensation at all times. At this moment, Wave after wave of pleasant sensation surged through her leg as though it had broken through some shackles. Her leg felt incomparably nimble and lively. My leg... She might be slow-witted, but it was clear to see that the injury on her leg had been cured. Teacher, thank... Wang Ying's knees slackened and she kneeled onto the floor. Her eyes were entirely red. For this day she had waited for a very long time. In fact, she even felt despair at her situation. Never in her dreams would she imagine that. Such a stubborn illness would be cured by the academy's worst teacher. It seems that the fact is that he is a very capable person, just that he maintains a low profile. Such a thought popped into her head. If he wasn't intentionally maintaining a low profile, regardless of how his lessons were like, just the fact that he was able to cure her legs means that he was more than capable of building up his reputation in this academy. How else was it possible for him to be the last in the teacher qualification examination? With such a thought in mind, Wang Ying kneeled to the floor and acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her teacher from the depths of her heart. All thoughts of withdrawing from his tutelage were dispelled. Now that your leg injury has recovered, go out and train properly. If you have any other problems, come over and find me afterward. Zhang Xuan gestured and entrusted her with a task. By the way, call Liu Yang over. Yes, Wang Ying replied excitedly before walking out of the room. I intend to withdraw from his lessons later. Are any of you all with me? In the classroom, after Liu Yang, Zheng Yang, Zhao Ya, and Yuan Tao had introduced themselves to one another, Liu Yang said, to tell the truth, he felt extremely dispirited. Scoring within the top 100, there were many top teachers who were vying for him. Yet, in the end, due to the bet made between two teachers, he was lost to the worst teacher in the entire academy. The intense feeling of being wronged made him go into a frenzy. No matter what, I have to withdraw from his lessons today, even if it means that I have to withdraw from the school. No one will be able to halt my footsteps. I also want to withdraw from his lessons. But if Zhangshuan Laoshi were to be angered, it is hard to tell what he might do. Fatty Yuan Tao couldn't resist saying, angry? So what if he is angry? What can he do? I don't want to go berserk from his misguidance. Liu Yang scoffed. Berserk? Zheng Yang looked over doubtfully. He only knew that the teacher before him scored badly for the teacher qualification examination, being the last of the lot. He had never heard of the incident of a student going berserk from his guidance. Liu Yang continued. If you don't believe it, just wait and see. When Wang Ying walks out later, her face will surely be awful. She will feel like she has been scammed. I have already long heard of Zhangshuan Laoshi's teaching standards. If he was able to offer proper pointers, he wouldn't have landed in such a state being viewed in contempt by the other teachers. Jia! Just as they were speaking, the door opened and Wang Ying walked out with an excited look. Liu Yang was taken aback. Initially, he thought that she would be depressed, yet, contrary to his expectations, she was smiling happily. The other few students were also puzzled. That joy came from the depths of her heart. She must have reaped some great rewards for such an expression to appear. Could it be that the teacher, with such a horrible reputation, could give proper pointers? To get a student to be so excited in just a single session, as though she had attained some precious treasure. Probably even the famous Lu Shun Laoshi wasn't capable of such a feat. Liu Yang, teacher called for you to enter. Oblivious to what the others were thinking, Wang Ying informed him before going to one corner to start training. Me? Liu Yang clenched his jaw. I would like to see what pointers you are able to offer me. If you can't offer me any good pointers, I will withdraw from your lessons. Muttering silently in his heart, he walked into the room. Liu Yang might have been guided by Zhang Xuan previously, but he didn't believe that the latter was capable. Rather, he thought that Zhang Xuan simply got lucky. After all, asking someone to use a different hand to execute a punching routine didn't involve much skill. Thus, from the depths of his heart, he still looked down on the teacher in front of him. "Teacher!" Walking into the room, he cupped his hand and bowed slightly to Zhang Xuan, although his tone wasn't very respectful. "I have seen you execute your battle techniques before." Seemingly oblivious to his disrespect, Zhang Xuan continued. "To be able to train Soaring Flower Fist to the rookie level and Dragon Inch Fist to the expert level, not bad." "What? How did you know that I am trained in Dragon Inch Fist?" Hearing those words, Liu Yang, who was disregarding Zhang Xuan, almost fainted from shock. Logically, due to his weak strength, he should have focused on his cultivation technique. Even if he had to learn battle technique, he should have practiced a normal battle technique such as Soaring Flower Fist instead of Dragon Inch Fist. Dragon Inch Fist, being a mortal lower-tier battle technique, was much more formidable than the Soaring Flower Fist. In order to become stronger, he hid the fact that he was practicing this punch routine from his family members. Ever since his Dragon Inch Fist reached rookie level, he had never executed it in front of anyone else. Previously, the battle technique which he showed Zhang Xuan was the Soaring Flower Fist, yet Zhang Xuan was able to tell that he practiced the Dragon Inch Fist and that it was at the expert level. How could he tell? There are shadows of the Dragon Inch Fist in your Soaring Flower Fist. Naturally, Zhang Xuan couldn't possibly reveal that it was due to the Library of Heaven's Path. He didn't even blink when telling an outright lie. You can even tell from that. Liu Yang was still in a state of disbelief. The two skills weren't even in the slightest related to one another. Previously, he also executed the Soaring Flower Fist in front of Kaohsiung Laoshi, but he wasn't able to tell that much from it. Yet the Academy's worst teacher was able to see through it with one glance. Was this for real? While he was still holding doubts in his heart, the teacher sitting before him continued. Reaching the level of an expert, your Dragon Inch Fist holds considerable might. However, do you feel an ache under your armpits and an itch in your Jianjin Quaston acupoint whenever you execute it? This... Taking a few steps back, Liu Yang looked as though he has seen a ghost, fear appearing within his eyes. Not only were the words of the other party correct, they were exactly spot on. It was as though he had seen him training. How did you know?" Liu Yang couldn't help but ask with a pale face. "It is very simple. You have been practicing an inappropriate battle technique. If you continue training at this rate, I can guarantee that the muscles of your entire arm will be destroyed within 3 years. Even immortals will find it hard to save you. In fact, the effects are already apparent now. Do you feel your body going stiff when you are sleeping at night, sometimes even spasming?" Zhang Xuan questioned. Liu Yang trembled. Indeed, he had such a condition. Just that, he thought it was due to overexhaustion from excessive training, so he didn't pay it much heed. Never in his dreams would he imagine that it was due to him practicing the Dragon Inch Fist. Dragon Inch Fist. It is a skill which regards one's body like a dragon and emphasizes the concept of might in every inch of your body. If you had reached Fighter 4 Dan Pigu realm and had Genki nourish your muscles, there won't be any side effects from cultivating this battle technique. However, you are only in Juxi realm and your body is far too weak. Forcefully cultivating this battle technique will only cause your body to be injured. As time passes, the injury will only worsen. This is also the reason why, although you aren't left-handed, your left hand possess significantly greater strength than your right hand. That is because you practice the Dragon Inch Fist with your right, causing great damage to it. If you don't stop now, you will become crippled, Zhang Xuan warned. "Teacher, save me." At this moment, Liu Yang no longer possessed the arrogance he had when he first walked in. His knees weakened and he kneeled to the floor. At this moment, he understood that the teacher before him was definitely an expert, a master among experts. That was because everything Zhang Xuan said fitted perfectly with what was happening to him. If Zhang Xuan didn't voice it out, Liu Yang wouldn't have paid much attention to it. However, now that he had stated all of it out clearly and logically, Liu Yang immediately understood that everything he said is true. In the face of such an expert, what rights did he have to remain arrogant? It was laughable that he thought that he felt wronged for acknowledging him as his teacher. Only now did he realize how fortunate he was. Before acknowledging Cao Xiong, he had also met quite a few notable teachers in the academy and displayed his battle technique before them. However, they were unable to tell that he was trained in the Dragon Inch Fist, needless to say, seeing through the fact that his right arm was injured. First, stop training in the Dragon Inch Fist and try your best to raise your cultivation. As for the injury that you have sustained and accumulated, I will think of an idea to solve it, Zhang Xuan declared. All right, call Zhao Ya in. Yes. Liu Yang nodded his head hurriedly. Not daring to say anything further, he quickly walked out. The moment he walked out, he saw Zheng Yang, Zhao Ya, and Yuan Tao staring at him. Have you withdrawn from Zhang Xuan Laoxi's tutelage? Yuan Tao asked in agitation. Withdraw? Why should I withdraw? Liu Yang waved his hand and declared proudly, his face not turning red in the slightest. He who teaches me for one day is my father for life. I, Liu Yang, will not withdraw from Zhang Xuan Laoxi's lessons. What kind of person do you think I am? Do I look like that casual of a person? I really don't know what you all are thinking, to be thinking about withdrawing all day along. Aren't you all embarrassed? Zheng Yang, Zhao Ya, and Yuan Tao. Shameless. He is too shameless. Just a moment ago, he was still going on about how determined he was to withdraw from Zhang Xuan's lessons. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he changed his words entirely. Exactly how thick is his skin? That teacher is probably truly capable. Seeing the vastly different attitudes between the two when they went in and came out, Zhao Ya thought in her mind as she pushed the door open. Actually, after hearing Uncle Yao Han's words, it wasn't like she never wavered in her determination. However, the truth still stood that the other party was able to point out her illness accurately, giving her hope for a cure. After all, she was too embarrassed to speak of this illness in front of others, so it was impossible for her to reveal it to too many people. Sit down. Upon walking into the room, she saw Zhang Laoxi and sat down. Teacher, you said that. You can cure my illness? Zhao Ya reddened. Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Your illness is an easy problem. Actually, it wasn't very difficult to solve Zhao Ya's problem. She wasn't really sick, but rather, she possessed the pure yin body, a physical body which countless women desired. The yin energy in her body was overpowering, and if it was directed correctly, her cultivation would soar rapidly. However, it was a pity that no one in Bayou City noticed it and even chose a yin nature cultivation technique for her. For the other females, it was indeed quite a good manual to cultivate. However, for Zhao Ya, who possessed a pure yin body, to cultivate such a cultivation technique, it was simply worsening the situation for her. The yin energy in her body accumulated gradually over time. When she was younger, it was still undetectable. However, as her body developed, the unique traits of a female became apparent, and she would start to find it hard to suppress her urges. If she wasn't cured in time and continued on this way, she might become a being possessed by her lust and find it hard to satisfy her desires no matter how hard she tried. This was precisely the reason why such an awkward situation was occurring to her. Zhao Ya was taken aback. She didn't know that she possessed a pure yin body. In fact, even her father was oblivious to the fact. However, the part about her cultivating a pure yin cultivation technique was true. Was this really the cause? White Jade Pure Maiden Skill. It is an impressive skill, but it isn't suited for you. If you want to solve this problem at its roots, you have to find another new cultivation technique. After explaining the situation, Zhang Xuan stated, How did you know that I cultivate the white jade pure maiden skill? Zhao Ya was taken aback. This cultivation technique had been passed down in the Bayou City. Other than the Bai family, there were very few people who were aware of it. Even the butler, Yao Han, who was at the entrance of the classroom now, wasn't too sure about it. Yet, the teacher before her was able to point it out instantly. Zhao Ya was in a state of disbelief. If I am capable of seeing through illness naturally, I would be able to see through your cultivation technique as well. Zhang Xuan tilted his head 45 degrees as he assumed the look of an expert whose depth couldn't be seen. Cultivating a new cultivation technique can solve the problem? Then, what kind of cultivation technique should I cultivate? Suppressing the astonishment in her mind forcefully, Zhao Ya asked, You should find a cultivation technique capable of unleashing the potential of your body and not one that accumulates yin energy. How about this? I will go to the Academy's Compendium Pavilion to take a look for you to see if there are any suitable ones for you, Zhang Xuan said. Thank you, teacher. Zhao Ya nodded her head hurriedly. The problem hadn't been solved yet, but at the very least she was aware of the cause now. A surge of exhilaration gushed through her heart. Zhang Xuan waved his hands to show that it was a small matter. Call Zheng Yang in. While Zhang Xuan was providing pointers to his students in the room, outside the classroom, a tall youth walked over in widened strides. Elder Liu, is what you said true? As the tall youth walked, he questioned the elderly following him behind. Young master, that is the truth. Young mistress has acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her master. Old Liu nodded his head quickly. If Zhang Xuan was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that the old Liu here was the person who tried to withdraw Wang Ying from his lessons yesterday. The person whom he called young master should be Wang Ying's elder brother, the genius of Hongtian Academy, the disciple of an elder Wang Tao, Zhang Xuan. The teacher who scored a 0 for his teacher qualification examination? What rights does he have to teach my younger sister? Damn it. If I don't teach him a lesson today to let him know the price for deceiving my younger sister, I will not call myself Wang Tao. As Wang Tao walked towards the classroom, he declared furiously, Jianjin, shoulder well acupoint, right beside the back of your neck on your shoulder. Tianshuan City was the capital of Tianshuan Kingdom. To be capable of becoming one of the 4 great families of the city, the prowess of the Wang family was one to behold. Even the principal of the Hongtian Academy would have to spare some face for such a powerful family. To think that of all teachers, Wang Ying would choose to acknowledge a fellow who had scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination. That was an insult, a massive insult. Even though other people might not be aware of the affairs shrouding Zhang Xuan, as a student of the academy, Wang Tao had heard a lot about him. He had once misguided a student, causing his cultivation to go berserk, thus sullying the reputation of the teachers. This person was the topic of discussion and target of mockery over a meal or tea with his peers. Yet, never in his imaginations would he expect his younger sister to choose to acknowledge him as her teacher. If the other students were to be informed of it, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? The more he thought about it, the more angry Wang Tao became. He walked towards the entrance of the classroom and spotted Yao Han, who was wrapped like a mummy. I see. It is young master Wang Tao. As the butler of Bayou City Lord Residence, Yao Han had come into contact with many different powers. Given that Wang Tao was a talented genius and the son of the head of the Wang family, it was natural for Yao Han to be aware of his existence. You are... Glancing at him, Wang Tao's eyebrows shot up. After getting beaten up so savagely, not a single hint of his original appearance remained. Even Zhao Ya found it hard to recognize him in his current state. Needless to say, Wang Tao. I am Yao Han from Bayou City, Yao Han said. Oh, so you are Butler Yao. Why are you... Wang Tao was slightly taken aback. I accidentally injured myself in the midst of training. Yaohan explained awkwardly before changing the topic. May I ask what young master Wang Tao is here for? My younger sister has acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her teacher. I am here to take her back, as well as to teach the arrogant teacher a lesson. Wang Tao didn't even try to conceal his rage. Ah? Your younger sister? You mean Wang Ying Xiaoji? 1. Yao Han was driven out of the classroom right shortly after he entered it. Furthermore, his attention was focused on Zhang Xuan the whole time. Thus, he didn't notice Wang Ying's presence. Wang Tao nodded his head. I have heard that Wang Ying Xiaoji's talent is in no way inferior to yours. Why would she choose him? Yao Han was puzzled. My younger sister rarely comes into contact with the outside world and has an innocent personality. That fellow has a glib tongue, and I'm not sure what the fellow said, but my younger sister actually believed the nonsense he spouted. Recalling what old Liu told him, fury flared from Wang Tao. How vile! That fellow is a scourge, the scum among the teachers. Upon recalling how the young mistress of his family had fallen for his deception as well, he gritted his teeth angrily. Young Master Wang Tao, you have to teach that fellow a lesson. Wang Tao replied. At the same time, he stared at him doubtfully. Right, Butler Yao, why are you here? Let's not talk about it. The more I talk about it, the angrier I get. Our young mistress had also fallen for the deceitful words of Zhang Xuan and acknowledged him as her teacher. Yao Han scoffed. You mean Zhaoya Xiaojie? Wang Tao was taken aback. Yes. Yao Han nodded his head. Then, why don't you barge in and expose that hypocritical fellow? Why are you waiting at the entrance instead? Wang Tao was bewildered. I wanted to expose that fellow, but our young mistress got agitated. I had no choice but to wait outside. Young Master Wang Tao, you came at a perfect timing. If you were to go in now, teach that shameless fellow a lesson and expose his ugly intentions, our young mistress would be able to see his true colors, Yao Han said. Rest assured, I will be exposing his fraud now. I will make sure that shameless fellow reveals his despicable self. Wang Tao gritted his teeth and nodded his head. Then, he kicked the door open and walked in with widened strides. On the other hand, Zhang Xuan had finally gone through the individual situations of his 5 students with them. There were quite a few flaws with Zheng Yang's spear. Zhang Xuan elaborated on them slightly, causing Zheng Yang's strength to soar once again, and the latter rejoiced over his improvement. On the other hand, Yuan Tao had never cultivated a proper cultivation technique or battle technique. Zhang Xuan took out the Academy's basic Hongtian 9-Dan formula's 1-Dan formula and modified it slightly before passing it to him. He didn't modify much of it, so there was still a large gap between it and the Heaven's Path divine art that he was currently cultivating with. Even so, it was still several times more effective than the original Hongtian 9-Dan formula. With just one look, Yuan Tao almost leapt up from the joy rushing through him, overjoyed to realize that he had acknowledged an accomplished teacher. All right, I have roughly gone through the problems you all have on you. You all need to persevere in your training. Returning back to the classroom, Zhang Xuan gathered all 5 of his students together and was explaining the situation to them when, boom, the door to the classroom was kicked open. Following which, a furious howl echoed in the room. Zhang Xuan! Withdraw my younger sister and Zhaoya Xiaojie from your lessons right now. Otherwise, I will make you will suffer. Following which, Wang Tao rushed in and stood furiously before Zhang Xuan. His eyes were dyed crimson red, as though he was ready to murder someone. Big brother. Seeing her elder brother in such a state, Wang Ying was shocked and immediately rushed forward. Don't interfere in this. He pushed his younger sister to his back before staring coldly at Zhang Xuan. With a haughty expression, he said, Zhang Xuan, it is one thing if you use your nonsense to deceive others, but to think that you would dare to coax my younger sister with lies. You are seeking death. I will give you 10 seconds. If you withdraw my younger sister and Zhaoya Xiaoji from your tutelage now, I can let this slip. If not, even if you are a teacher, don't blame me for not going easy on you. Boom! With a scornful look, Wang Tao released his full strength, revealing a very powerful aura. He had reached the level of a fighter for Dan Pigu realm. No wonder he could become a disciple of an elder. This strength was in no way weaker than an average teacher of the academy. I am conducting lessons right now. Get out! Zhang Xuan looked at him blandly. Conducting lessons? With your standard, what could you possibly be teaching? Wang Tao mocked him coldly. Get out? You want me to get out? Who do you think you are? The only reason why I call you a teacher is out of basic respect. Look at how you are. Are you not aware of it? You are only a lowly teacher who is still in Zhengqi realm. Don't act like you are a big shot before me. Even if I were to beat you up today, the most that would happen is a reprimand by the elders. What can you possibly do to me? He wasn't wrong. There were quite a few disciples of the elders in the academy who were stronger than the teachers and held esteemed positions in the academy. Even if a conflict were to break out between them and the teachers, the most they would do was to reprimand them slightly. There wouldn't be any severe punishments. Big brother. Wang Ying's face paled. She was very aware of the fact whether the teacher before her had standards or not. When all of the expert physicians in the entire Tianshuan kingdom could do nothing about her problem, he was able to solve it casually. How could such a person possibly have no standards at all? Just as he was about to stop that rash elder brother of hers, the face of her teacher darkened and his eyes narrowed. Scram! To ask me to scram? He didn't expect that the trash of a teacher would get him to scram. Just as he was about to continue speaking, he caught a glimpse of the cold gaze of the other party. Looking into his eyes, Wang Tao shivered uncontrollably, as though he was a rabbit who had caught the gaze of a tiger. Under the oppression of a powerful aura, he retreated a few steps subconsciously, and his legs trembled. He had only felt such sharp aura from his master. How could it possibly appear on the academy's worst teacher, a fellow who was just fighter 3rd Dan Zhenqi realm? It took a moment before Wang Tao regained his composure. In that instant, Wang Tao's face darkened like an ant's nest as his eyes took on a deep shade of red. In his eyes, even though Zhang Xuan was a teacher, he was not any more than a trash. Yet, this trash dared to shout at him and cause him to retreat out of fear. If this were to spread out, how could he possibly face any other people? How would he be able to maintain his prestige? You are courting death. Feeling humiliated, Wang Tao roared, and with a flick of his hand, the sword on his waist had been drawn. The sword stabbed out in a flash. Pa, 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 at Fighter 4. Dan Pigu realm, one would possess strength beyond 500 kilograms. Even before the sword reached him, the continuous sound generated from the friction between the sword and the wind created an oppressing atmosphere, as though it would be impossible to counter the attack. Zhang Laoshi. Seeing her elder brother striking out with such speed, Wang Ying's face turns ghastly white. Although she was impressed by the guidance of Zhang Laoshi, she was well aware of the fact that the teacher before her was only at fighter 3rd Dan. He was far from a match for her brother. It was impossible for him to dodge the blow. He would definitely be injured. Frightened, she shrieked in fear and closed her eyes subconsciously. How could this be possible? Just when she thought that the Zhang Laoshi who just resolved her problem for her would be wounded by the sword, she heard voices of disbelief from Zhao Ya and the others. She quickly opened her eyes to take a look, and her eyeballs almost popped out from their sockets. She petrified on the spot. She saw her elder brother's incomparably powerful and mighty slash getting stopped in midair, and what was stopping it was the two seemingly weak fingers of Zhang Xuan Laoshi. To block such a powerful blow with just the pinching of 2 fingers. Impossible. Wang Tao was also in a state of disbelief. Before he came, he had made sure to look into Zhang Xuan's strength. Back then, the information he got was that he was only fighter 3rd Dan Genki realm, a weakling. How could he possibly stop his attack with just 2 fingers? In order to achieve such a feat, not only must one possess sufficient strength, he must also be precise in his timing, control over his strength, his positioning, and many other factors. If there were to be a slight discrepancy in his judgment, it was possible for his fingers to be severed and he would be severely injured. The other teachers, or perhaps even the Pixu realm elders, would be unable to achieve such a feat. Yet, a fellow who was reputed to be trash. Impossible. Coincidence. It must be a coincidence. Such a thought popped into his mind. A savage look appeared on Wang Tao's face once more, and exerting strength through his both hands, he howled, "Let go!" He wanted to retrieve his sword that was trapped between the 2 fingers of Zhang Xuan. However, despite trying twice consecutively, to the point that veins were popping out on his temple and that he was about to vomit blood due to overexertion of strength, he was astonished to realize that the sword that was held between the Zhang Xuan's fingers seemed to be firmly latched onto his fingers. No matter how much strength he exerted, it didn't budge in any way. Could it be his true strength isn't Genki realm? A peculiar thought appeared in his mind. But this is impossible. It hasn't been long since the last teacher qualification examination. Everyone in the academy is aware of the fact that he only has the strength of a Genki realm pinnacle. Furthermore, even if he were to break through his current realm, he would only be at Pigu realm, which is the same level as him. He wouldn't be so hard-pressed just by a mere 2 fingers of the other party. Scram! Just as Wang Tao was considering the peculiarity of the situation, a surge of might suddenly came rushing towards him through the sword, and the impassive words of the other party echoed by his ear. Before he could even react, his entire body was sent flying through the air. Boom! His head bashed through the door of the classroom. All right, let's continue on with our lessons. After casually throwing Wang Tao out, Zhang Xuan turned towards the rest and said blandly, Wang Ying, Zhao Ya, Liu Yang, Zheng Yang, and Yuan Tao stared at one another. The turn of events left them unable to react, and they were on the verge of exploding due to the overwhelming shock. That was a fighter 4 Dan Pigu realm expert. Not mentioning how an attack of his full strength was easily dealt with, to think he would be thrown out with such ease. Wasn't this teacher of theirs the worst teacher with the lowest combat ability in the entire academy? How did he do it? Teacher has been hiding his strength? Suddenly, Zhao Ya came to a realization as her face flushed from excitement. The only viable explanation was that the teacher before her had been concealing his true strength. If not, how could he possibly point out the problems whom no one else could discern and boost their might with just a casual pointer? The others weren't fools as well. They clenched their fists in agitation. Coming to the academy to come under the tutelage of the teachers who wouldn't hope to be under the guidance of a capable teacher. Before this, everyone thought that their lives would be miserable, judging from how they came under the tutelage of the academy's worst teacher. Only now did they know that they have won in the competition of choosing one's teachers, an overwhelming one at it. The teacher with the worst reputation in the academy was actually a true worldly expert. When their path of thoughts reached this point, all of the excessive thoughts disappeared from their minds as they nodded their head vigorously. Even Liu Yang, who held doubts about Zhang Xuan's lessons, couldn't help but look over in enthusiasm, afraid that he would miss out a single word of his teacher. What Lu Xun Laoshi and Wang Chao Laoshi. All of these had been thrown to the back of their minds. Not just them, even the elders would have to kneel when compared to Zhang Laoshi. To rush in like this, I hope that young master is fine. Outside the classroom, old Liu looked worriedly at Wang Tao, who had barged into the classroom furiously. Rest easy. Wang Tao Xiaoye has reached Fighter 4 Dan Pigu realm, while that Zhang Xuan is still stuck at Zhenqi realm. Soon he would be able to teach him a lesson and bring young mistress Wang Ying out. Yao Han nodded his head with a bright smile on his face. Just as he was visioning the pathetic state the shameless teacher would be in with his teeth scattered all over the floor, he suddenly heard Wang Tao's furious howl from the room. "It has begun!" Yao Han's eyes lit up and the edges of his mouth crept upwards. If that Zhang Xuan was only the last in the entire academy, Yao Han wouldn't be bothered to interfere in his affairs. However, to think that he would dare to be disrespectful to the young mistress? If Zhang Xuan didn't execute some underhanded tricks, how could the young mistress possibly willingly acknowledge him as her teacher? If Yao Han were to make a move personally, he would definitely incur the ire of the young mistress, not to mention offending the Hongtian Academy at that. It would be more than ideal for Wang Tao to make a move in his stead. Hongtian Academy was located in Tianshuan Royal Capital, the home ground of the Wang family. Even if Wang Tao were to beat up a teacher, they would definitely have the means to deal with it. Furthermore, Wang Tao was the disciple of an elder and held an esteemed position in the academy. It was much more appropriate for him to make a move. Hey. I would like to see how would that trash of a teacher embarrass himself. The more he thought about it, the more delighted he got. Yao Han crept towards the doorstep, intending to open up a crack between the doors and peek through it when he heard a boom, and the tightly shut doors burst open. Pung! Yao Han didn't even have the time to react from the sudden assault by the metal door. It slammed right into his face, rattling his consciousness. In the midst of his daze, a head came crashing into him. Kacha! The intimate encounter between his face and the head created the crisp melody of the cracking of a bone, and the two remaining teeth that survived yesterday's attack, after much difficulty, dislodged valiantly. Pooh! The intense pain caused Yao Han to convulse, and a mouthful of fresh blood burst forth. His body wasn't fragile, but he had yet to recover from his injuries from the prior day. Yesterday, he had been bashed in his face, and now he was slammed by a metal door before a head came crashing into him right after. It was already quite a blessing for him to be alive at this point. Young master. Old Liu realized that the one who was sent flying was his young master, and he dashed over, frightened. Damn it! Wang Tao might have knocked into the metal door, but with Yao Han cushioning his fall, he wasn't severely injured by that encounter. Standing up and recalling how the trash caught his blow and threw him out, he felt an intense fear. Although he shouted loudly, he didn't dare to approach the classroom anymore. Young Master Wang Tao, you... Faint-headed, Yao Han only realized at this point that the one who knocked into him was Wang Tao. With an intrigued expression, he struggled to stand up. Didn't you rush in to beat him up? How come you were the one who was sent flying out? I was practicing as a new type of battle technique. Wang Tao didn't dare to say that he had been thrown out by a trash, so he could only come up with something else. Battle technique? Yao Han's vision was still blurry from the previous impact. He hurriedly questioned, "Did you expose the true face of that fellow?" How did our young mistress react? Cough, I didn't have the time to make a move when my younger sister pushed me out. I think... Why don't we try waiting here? Wang Tao said with an embarrassed look. Just a moment ago, he was still declaring how he would make the other party suffer. Yet, the next moment, he was sent flying out. He wouldn't acknowledge such a shameful affair even if he were beaten to the verge of death. Wait? Yao Han scratched his head as doubts appeared in his mind. However, he didn't think that he should point them out, so he chose to change the topic instead. Wang Tao Xiaoye, I have a question to ask of you, seeing how you are also a student of Hongtian Academy. Go ahead. Seeing how Yao Han didn't continue pursuing the events that transpired in the classroom, Wang Tao heaved a sigh of relief and replied, Is there any female teachers in the academy who has B in their name? Recalling the fellow who beat him up the previous day, Yao Han's anger billowed. B? The most famous one of them all is the Academy's female goddess, Shen Bi Ru. I heard that Zhang Xuan Laoshi wanted to court her as well. He is truly a toad lusting over the flesh of a swan. Halfway through his words, Wang Tao paused abruptly. Before this, everyone knew that Zhang Xuan's abilities were subpar, and his capability as a teacher was horrendous as well. With such standards, he dared to pursue the Academy's female goddess, Shen Bi Ru. That's why everyone termed him as such. Now that Wang Tao had experienced the other party's strength firsthand and understood that he was on a different level from him, he found it unnatural to continue saying that he was a toad lusting over the flesh of a swan. Shen Bi Ru? Zhang Xuan wants to court her? Yao Han's eyes lit up as he came to a realization. The person whom the fellow yesterday was talking about must be her. He continued asking, "Other than Zhang Laoshi, is there anyone else who is courting her?" Shen Laoshi is incredibly beautiful. The teachers who wish to court her are far too many for me to count. However, the most famous of them all is the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, Shang Bin Laoshi. After pondering for a moment, Wang Tao looked over in suspicion. Why is Butler Yao asking such a question? "Oh, I am just casually asking." Yao Han didn't touch any further on the topic, but a glint flashed past his eyes. I will be able to ascertain it after looking into whether this Shangbin had gotten into a conflict with Zhang Xuan yesterday. If it really is him, regardless of whether he is the son of an elder, I would definitely make him suffer. When had the butler of the Bayou City Lord, a figure that rose above the others, standing beneath only an individual, suffered such a great injustice? If he didn't seek vengeance on him, it would be hard to quell the resentment accumulating in his heart. For it, he was willing to turn into a demon. While Yao Han was still considering whom he should find to gather intelligence, the person in question, Shang Bin, had just finished conducting a lesson and had left his classroom when he met a young man. "Cao Xiong Laoshi." "Shang Xiaoye," Cao Xiong said respectfully. "Cao Xiong Laoshi, you were looking for me?" Shang Bin looked over with a puzzled expression. They might be both teachers of the academy, and they often bumped into one another, but their relationship was still stuck at the level of an acquaintance. "Indeed, I have something which I would have to trouble Shang Xiaoye with." Cao Xiong hesitated for a moment before speaking. "As long as it is something I could help you with, I will try my best," Cao Xiong replied. As the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, there were quite a few teachers who came looking for him for favors every day, and he had long gotten used to it. "Is that so?" Yesterday, I took much difficulty in admitting a student under my tutelage, but he was snatched away by another teacher through deception. Isn't Elder Shang in charge of the Education Bureau? I would like to ask if it is possible to transfer the student back to me, Cao Xingzhi said. Liu Yang was the best student which he spent a lot of effort to recruit, yet he lost him to Zhang Xuan due to that bet. When he returned, he got angrier and angrier the more he thought about it. Eventually, he couldn't bear it anymore and came to look for Shangbin today. Shangbin's grandfather was Elder Shang Chen, the head of the Academy's Education Bureau. Allocating a student to another teacher would be quite a simple feat for him. Transfer back? Shangbin frowned. If that student willingly came under the other person's tutelage, it would be difficult. You also know that students are much more troublesome nowadays. If they are dissatisfied with anything, they would report the incident to the royal court and the teacher union. Then we will... He isn't willing. I can guarantee that, Cao Xiong hurriedly replied. Even if he isn't willing, if the other teacher is unwilling to let him go, it won't be easy as well. You know the school rules? Shangbin waved his hand. Suddenly, he raised his head and asked, Just now, you said, deception? May I know which teacher is the one who coaxed your student over? It is our academy's trash teacher, Zhang Xuan. Speaking of that young man, Cao Xiong clenched his jaws and hatred could be plainly seen on his face. Zhang Xuan? Your student was coaxed over by him? Hearing that name once again, Shangbin's rage burned once again. If it wasn't for this fellow, he would definitely be able to get a dinner date with his goddess. A fellow who was only fighter 3rd Dan and scored a 0 for him teacher qualification. Examination would actually dare to disregard his authority. He was seeking for death. If it wasn't for the presence of the goddess yesterday, such that it was inconvenient to resort to physical means, he would have definitely beat him until he was on the verge of dying. Yes, since he is that kind of teacher, no humans would be willing to become his student. So, I would like to trouble Shang Xiaoye to help me bring up this matter with Elder Shang and allocate my student back. Cao Xiong said carefully, afraid that the other party would refuse his request. There is no need to bring this up with Elder Shang. I will settle this matter for you now. Shangbin waved his hand majestically. You're going to settle the matter for me? The other teachers might still require the help of my grandfather for the reallocation process, but since we're talking about the useless trash Zhang Xuan, why do we have to go through so much trouble? We just have to go to him straight, and if he refuses, we will cripple him. Shangbin gestured grandly. He might be at a loss in means to deal with other teachers, but towards the one who scored a 0 for the teacher qualification examination, it was simply too easy for him to make a stand to teach him a lesson. Disregarding his weak abilities, the crux of it was that no one in the academy would possibly come in his defense. The most important point of all was that he had intended to give Zhang Xuan a good thrashing to vent his frustration, but he had been vexed over the lack of a suitable justification for it. If he were to strike without a suitable justification, he would surely leave a bad impression with Shen Biru if she were to find out. But now, he had duped away the student of another teacher, and the person in question had come over seeking for his help. He could make use of this reason to lash out at him. He didn't expect that Shangbin would be so generous. Cao Xiong was taken aback. There is no need for this. Come with me. If you're afraid, I will do it for you. The corners of Shangbin's lip curled upwards as a glint of brutality flashed across his eyes. Then I will be thanking Shang Xiaoye in advance. Cao Xiong's eyes lit up excitedly as he nodded his head hurriedly. The two of them moved towards Zhang Xuan's classroom with widened strides. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the entrance of Zhang Xuan's classroom to see the mummy-like Yao Han and the young master of the Wang family. Wang Tao, what are you doing here instead of training over at grandfather's? Shangbin frowned. He might be the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, but he was still a little off in terms of standing in comparison to Wang Tao. Shangbin Laoshi, Wang Tao bowed. My younger sister was duped to attend lessons here. I intend to take her back. Shangbin? Yao Han was still considering whom he should gather intelligence on Shangbin from when he heard that the young man before him was Shangbin. He hurriedly lifted his head to take a good look at him. You mean Wang Ying Xiaojie? Shangbin's face darkened. Coldness radiated out of his eyes as he declared, that Zhang Xuan is really too daring. To dare to dupe even Wang Xiaoji, he must be tired of living. Looks like if I don't teach him a lesson, it would be hard to appease the crowd. Indeed. Wang Tao nodded his head. Since Wang Ying Xiaojie was duped to come under his tutelage, why didn't you barge in to stop him and chose to wait here instead? Harumphing, Shangbin looked over with a puzzled expression. That? Wang Tao dared not to admit that he was thrown out. Scratching his head, just when he was perplexed over how he should answer, Yao Han, who was beside him, said, Isn't there a rule in the academy that states that entry into a classroom is disallowed in the midst of a lesson? Thus, we could only wait outside for the lessons to end. Only now did Shangbin notice the mummy-like Yao Han. This is the butler of City Lord Zhao of Bayou City, Yao Han. Wang Tao hurriedly introduced him. So, it is Butler Yao. I have long heard of your name. Shangbin nodded his head and continued, There is such a rule in the academy that no one is allowed to barge into the classroom in the midst of a lesson. However, It doesn't matter in this case. You all can follow behind me to enter the classroom. Today, I will personally take care of the fellow who has no morals as a teacher and goes around conning others. All right. Hearing that he was going to make a move, Wang Tao's eyes lit up and followed closely behind him. Yao Han hesitated for a moment before following behind them in the classroom. Hongtian 9 Dan formula. It might be the most basic cultivation technique of Hongtian Academy, but there are quite a few problems with it. For example, the 5 students sat in the classroom, listening attentively to Zhang Xuan's explanations. Despite it only being the first lecture, they were all incomparably shocked. It was as though they have consumed ginseng fruit and were getting drunk on his words. The few students present in the classroom, with the exception of Yuan Tao, have exceptional backgrounds. They might have never gone to an academy, but they had learned everything systematically. They have undergone lectures of many different teachers, and even had the privilege of having Fighter 5 Dan and 6 Dan experts offering them pointers. However, they had never been to such a lesson in their entire life. The lecture gave them a feeling of enlightenment. They found themselves suddenly comprehending many things that they were perplexed in the past. The breath in their body seemed to be tempted to follow the methods which the teacher was describing to them, and a sensation that they would be able to break through any time now gushed through them. The lecture was simply too well said. Hearing Zhang Xuan's lessons, they realized that even the supposed high-level teachers paled greatly in comparison to him. This was especially so for Zhao Ya. As the daughter of a city lord, her father often deciphered cultivation techniques for her. Initially, she had always thought that her father was the best lecturer in the entire Tianshuan kingdom. After all, her father's strength was clear for all to see. However, in comparison to Zhang Laoshi, she felt like a frog in the well. It was laughable. There was totally no way to compare the both of them at all. Zhang Laoshi's explanations were spot on. No matter how incredible the cultivation technique and battle technique was, he was able to immediately spot the flaws in it, causing one to be shocked and go into deep thoughts, unable to calm the agitation in them for a long period of time. Often, a single deciphered sentence of Zhang Laoshi would send them into thinking for half a day. After they finally comprehended it after much difficulty, they would realize that he had already been talking for a long period of time, and that they had missed many of the knowledge which he had imparted then. Zhang Laoshi's standards are way too high. At this moment, the 5 students finally understood how deep the foundations of battle techniques and how wide the tree of knowledge was within this young man who wasn't much older than them. Previously, I laughably thought that Zhang Laoshi had simply lucked out to make my strength soar instantaneously. Only now do I realize that, given his wisdom, it is a small feat for him to accomplish such greatness. There are more than 100 methods for him to make my strength increase by a fold. The previously arrogant Liu Yang couldn't help but tremble on the spot. In comparison to him, Chao Xiong Laoshi. Sigh, I better not compare the two of them. They are at totally different heights. There is no way to compare the two of them. It is like they both exist in different worlds. It is fortunate that they made that bet. Otherwise, how could I possibly meet such a great teacher? The 5 students were each listening attentively to the lecture in agitation, afraid that they would miss some important knowledge. Door to the classroom was pushed open, and a few men walked in with large strides. Zhang Xuan, I didn't expect that your guts would be so inflated after not meeting for a day. Walking into the room, Shangbin surveyed the surroundings and noticed that the trash had managed to admit in 5 students. A savage expression flashed across his eyes as he sneered coldly. To dare to deceive Wang Ying Xiaojie, Zhao Ya Xiaoji, and the others, as well as to coax the student of Chao Xiong Laoshi to come under your tutelage instead, where the hell did you find such courage? Shangbin Laoshi, Cao Xiong Laoshi. Seeing the few people who just barged in, Zhang Xuan frowned. I am in the midst of a lesson. If there's anything you want to say, please say them after the lessons. Lessen your head. Shang Xiaoye came personally over. So what the hell are you acting so high and mighty for? Given your standards, it is already a blessing for the others to not be misguided by you. Yet you talk about having lessons. You little brat who don't even know the basics. How dare you pretend like you're something big before us? Cao Xiong mocked Zhang Xuan coldly. Since the both of them were already hostile to one another, there was no need for him to put on an act anymore. Get out! You're not welcome here. Zhang Xuan narrowed his eyes. You are still continuing on with the act. Zhang Xuan, do you even remember your own surname? Shangbin laughed coldly. Quickly release Zhaoya Xiaojie and Wang Yin Zhaojie from your lessons, and reallocate Liu Yang back to Chaoxiong Laoshi. If so, I might choose to back down and not teach you a lesson today. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you will have to spend this school term in a wheelchair. You want to make a move on me? Zhang Xuan glanced over. The academy forbids teachers from fighting one another within its compounds. Is Shangbin Laoshi unaware of the academy rules? The academy rules are made for humans. Against others, I would still be worried about the consequences about flouting those rules, but towards you? Hey. Do you think that there would be anyone in the academy who would stand up for a trash like you? Shangbin declared, with an expression that clearly spelled out his vile intentions. I get it. Is it because I offended you with my words yesterday? That's why you are intentionally seeking trouble with me now? Aren't you afraid that Shen Bi Ru Laoshi would be displeased by such actions of yours? Zhang Xuan harumphed. Heh, at least you are well aware of it. Since I have decided to teach you a lesson, of course, I won't be worried about you talking nonsense. Shangbin didn't deny it, and just as he was about to gleefully step forward to teach the fellow before him a lesson, he was interrupted by another furious voice. It's you! Yao Han's eyes turned red. Given how Zhang Xuan had offended Shangbin yesterday, and Shen Bi Ru Laoshi was involved in the incident as well, if Yao Han was still unable to figure out the culprit who beat him up, even he himself would suspect that he was a fool. What? Seeing Butler Yao rage out when he was about to punish Zhang Xuan, Shangbin turned around to look at him, bewildered. Do you think that it is possible for you to be unaware of what you have done? Before Shangbin could react, accompanied by a loud roar, a fist smashed violently onto his face. The heck! Shangbin could only feel everything before him turning dark. The regions around his eyes bruised up. His body staggered for a moment before falling to the ground. To dare to beat me up to such a pathetic state, I will make you suffer for it. Recalling the agony he had undergone from the beating yesterday, there wasn't any hesitation in Yao Han's blows at all. Sitting onto Shangbin's body, fist after fist came raging onto him like a storm. Butler Yao! Everything occurred too quickly. Wang Tao and Cao Xiong were flabbergasted. Actually, they weren't the only ones who were taken aback. Even Zhao Ya, Wang Ying, and the others stared at one another in confusion. Just a moment ago, when these few people came over to find trouble with Zhang Laoshi, Zhang Xuan's students were still quite enraged and had intended to stand up for him. Yet, before they could do anything, the other side started fighting among themselves. Wasn't this incident too bizarre? This was especially so for Zhaoya. She was well aware of the personality of Butler Yao. He was a very dignified and rational person who handled problems systematically. Otherwise, her father wouldn't have possibly allowed him to become the butler of their family. But what happened today? Why did he start beating up Shangbin before he could finish his words? Probably the only one who knew what was happening was Zhang Xuan. The reason why he intentionally mentioned that he offended Shangbin yesterday and brought up Shen Biru's name was to remind Butler Yao of the two features of his attacker yesterday. In the end, just as he intended, he made a move on Shangbin. Actually, this couldn't be blamed on Butler Yao for being rash. After all, no matter who it was, if they were to be beaten up out of the blue for no good reason, they would definitely hold some resentment in their heart. Furthermore, he was of esteemed position and represented the image of Bayou City, so he had never suffered such injustice. To add on, he had been angered by Zhang Xuan multiple times these 2 days, and his young mistress had been curbing him from assaulting him. Without an outlet to vent his frustration, it had been welling up in his chest. At this moment, when he had met his enemy, how could he stand it any further? "Butler Yao, what are you doing?" Feeling the fists crashing down onto him like raindrops, the confused Shangbin could only feel his vision going dark. He almost threw up a mouthful of fresh blood. What was going on? This was the first time he was meeting this Butler Yao, and he shouldn't have offended him before, so why the heck was he so brutal? No matter how he tried to recall, he couldn't fathom how he could have possibly offended the other party. What am I doing? Stop acting ignorant here. Are you not aware of it yourself? Peng, 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 peng. Butler Yao's fist came landing one after another without any moment of rest. Shangbin was a high-level teacher and had reached the level of Fighter 5 Dan Dingley realm. Even so, there was still a distance between him and Yao Han's 6 Dan Pixue realm. He wasn't even a match for Yao Han in a normal battle, needless to say, a sudden assault. He was done in with just a single punch. Butler. "Yao, calm down, calm down. We can talk things through calmly." Only now then did Chao Xiong and Wang Tao regain their senses, and they hurriedly pulled the both of them apart. At this moment, Shangbin's handsome face was swollen to the point that there was no difference between it and a pig's head. Damn it! Shangbin was about to explode from anger. Initially, he had intended to teach Zhang Xuan a lesson, but never in his dreams did he expect the butler Yao from Bayou City to suddenly go insane and assault him. At this moment, all of his accumulated rage channeled towards Butler Yao. No matter what personal grudges the few of you may hold among yourselves, please settle it outside the classroom. This isn't a location for you all to fight it out. If you all do not leave now and continue to interrupt my lessons, I will inform the Central Education Bureau and call them over. Fine, just you all wait. Hearing that he would inform the Central Education Bureau, Shangbin turned around and walked away. If news were to spread about his current state, how could still possibly have the face to meet others? He must not allow any teachers to see him in his current state. Shang Xiaoye. Shang Xiaoye. Initially, Chao Xiong thought that it would be an easy task. With Shang Xiaoye making a move personally, he would definitely be able to get Zhang Xuan to return his student. However, never in his dreams did he expect to see such a situation occurring. Cao Xiong hurriedly followed behind him. Soon, the two of them disappear from view. Uncle Yao, what are you doing? After the two of them left, Zhao Ya walked up and looks at her Uncle Yao, her face flushed red from anger. This Uncle Yao was normal in the past, so why was he getting more and more overboard nowadays? Young mistress. Yao Han didn't know how he should reply to Zhao Ya's words. After all, he couldn't possibly say that he had intended to sneak over to Zhang Xuan's dormitory in an attempt to castrate him, but ended up getting bashed up by Shangbin instead, and he did a moment ago was to exact vengeance for that. All right, I am still in the midst of the lesson. I would have to ask for the rest of you to leave. Zhang Xuan gestured. After hesitating for a moment, Yao Han, Wang Tao, and old Liu left the classroom yet again. Damn it, damn it. After leaving Zhang Xuan's classroom, Shangbin cried out in anger. That Yao Han must be taught a lesson. Zhang Xuan as well. To dare to look at me contemptuously, he must be punished. As the grandson of an elder, his life had been smooth sailing all along. When had he ever suffered such injustice? Furthermore, the worst of it all was that he didn't even know the reason behind it. He was in the midst of talking when the other party suddenly rushed up to assault him in the blink of an eye. He found the scenario incomprehensible. That Yao Han must be an accomplice of Zhang Xuan. Otherwise, why would he make a move on Shang Xiaoye? I think he must have been ordered to do so, Cao Xiong said. No doubt! That must be it! Shang Bin agreed. He had never offended Yao Han, but the other party made a move on him without any warnings. It must be due to his declaration of wanting to teach Zhang Xuan a lesson. Are you sure that Liu Yang did not willingly acknowledge Zhang Xuan as his teacher? After a while, Shang Bin calmed down and turned around to ask, I can ascertain that he didn't do it out of his own free will. Recalling the unwillingness on Liu Yang's face when he left yesterday, Cao Xiong replied confidently, Great. If you're that sure of it, go and apply for a enlightenment will trial, Shang Bin said. Enlightenment will trial? This. Cao Xiong's face darkened. Enlightenment. Will trial was a special method to determine the allocation of a student who was vied by multiple teachers when the academy is unable to make a judgment. The student would undergo the trial of the Enlightenment Will Tower, and the Enlightenment Will Tower would reflect his true thoughts in the form of a confidence meter. If the student was proven to be unwilling to come under the tutelage of the teacher of the student would be punished. On the other hand, if it was proven that the one who applied for the Enlightenment Will trial was making a false report, he would receive an equivalent punishment. This was the final resort used when there was truly no means to determine the allocation of the student. Cao Xiong was aware of it, but he felt that things have yet to get to such an irreconcilable point. Why? Are you lying to me? Could it be that the fellow joined Zhang Xuan willingly? Looking at Cao Xiong's hesitant face, Shang Bin's face darkened even further. No, he definitely did not join willingly. I will apply now. I will make sure Zhang Xuan will get what he deserves. Cao Xiong nodded his head. Then hurry up. Looking at his compliance, Shang Bin nodded his head in satisfaction. When you are applying for it, make sure to raise the punishment to the maximum. This way, Zhang Xuan would be in for a tough time, perhaps he might even get fired. Punishment could be raised based on the applier's request. The higher the stakes were, the heavier the penalty on the side who failed the trial. All right! Cao Xiong's eyes lit up with excitement as he visioned the image of Zhang Xuan getting fired. All right, we will end the lessons here. Everyone, remember to try to comprehend the contents of this lesson when you get back. If there is anything you are unsure of, you can come over to me to clarify it. Zhang Xuan gestured. Yes. The 5 students answered in chorus before leaving the classroom. They didn't spend a long time immersed in the lesson, and there were even a couple of times where someone barged in to create trouble, but they still benefited greatly from it. It could even be said that if they were to persist on to try to comprehend what was taught, their cultivation would surely rise by leaps and bounds. The 5 of them left the room excitedly. The moment Wang Ying walked out, her elder brother Wang Tao grabbed her. Go! Let's return back to our clan. Return back to our clan? Big brother, why must we return? Wang Ying was taken aback. You refused to listen to the words of your elder brother and chose to acknowledge the worst teacher in the academy as your teacher. I have already reported this matter to father, and he says that he would like to talk to you personally. Wang Tao harumphed. The first time he entered the classroom, he was thrown out. The second time, he returned without accomplishing anything. Judging from the expression on his younger sister, he knew that he would be unable to convince her to change her mind. Thus, he sent old Liu back to inform the clan of the matter. He intended to get their father to persuade her. His younger sister's personality might be pure and innocent, but she still listened rather obediently to the words of their father. Father. Fright could be seen on Wang Ying's face. Their father was the current clan head of the Wang clan, Wang Hong. He was a very strict person who rarely smiles. Even his children tremble before his presence. Zhang Xuanlaoxi actually isn't the way that you all put him out to be. His lectures are very good, Wang Ying tried to retort. Say those words to father and see if he believes it. Wang Tao waved his hand, and without a second word, he pulled his younger sister out of the academy. Hongtian Academy and the Wang clan are both in Tianchuan City, and they weren't too far apart from one another. In a short moment, the two siblings reached their destination, and Wang Tao pulled Wang Ying to their father's study. "Enter!" The cold and strict voice of clan head Wang Hong sounded out. "Yes!" Wang Ying tremored from fright upon hearing that voice. Clenching her jaws, she followed closely behind her elder brother into the room. In the study, clan head Wang Hong was sitting at the utmost center of the room. The few sitting behind him were the influential elders within the clan. There was also one youth who was sitting by the side. Wang Ying recognized the youth as the grandson of the second elder, Wang Yan. She went to the Hongtian Academy at the same time as Wang Yan. In the end, the latter managed to acknowledge the renowned Luxun Laoshi as his teacher, whereas she acknowledged the academy's worst reputed teacher, Zhang Xuan, father. The tense atmosphere in the study made Wang Ying dare not to breathe heavily. "Kneel down!" Clan head Wang Hong's face darkened. The teacher played an utmost role on one's route of cultivation. Before entering the academy, he had reminded her time and time again to acknowledge Lu Xun as her teacher. Yet, this lass. Why can't you acknowledge anyone else? Why must you choose the worst one in the whole academy? When he heard that news, he almost died from sheer anger. Putong. Wang Ying shivered as she knelt down. "Do you admit your mistake?" Wang Hong asked coldly. Acknowledging one's teacher should be based on an individual's free will, so I didn't want to say too much about it. But are you unaware of the standards of this Zhang Xuan Laoshi? The one who scored the worst for the teacher qualification examination and even left a student berserk. Does someone like that have the qualifications to become your teacher? Clan head Wang Hong said with a grave expression on his face. If you were unaware of the situation and were deceived by him, I would still turn a blind eye to it. But why didn't you listen to your brother's words? I heard that your elder brother asked you to withdraw from his lessons, but you refuted him? What are you trying to do? Clan head Wang Hong's voice became louder and louder, to the point that the study tremored with creaking noises. Hearing the reprimand of her father, Wang Ying's face turned red before she gritted her jade teeth and said, "Father, Zhang Xuan Laoshi isn't as bad as the rumors put him out to be. He is a talented teacher, just that he keeps a low profile. I want to be under his tutelage. I will not withdraw from his lessons." She benefited greatly from just a single lesson. Wang Ying knew that coming under the tutelage of Zhang Xuan was an opportunity for her. If she were to miss this chance, she would definitely regret it for the rest of her life. A talented teacher? Haha, a fellow who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination? Wang Ying, you should listen to the advice of the clan head. Don't be deceived by that Zhang Xuan. You should learn from Wang Yan. He might have only gone on one lesson, but his strength has already increased by 40%. The guidance of Luxun Laoshi is definitely top-notch in the entire academy. Hearing the words of the young lady, the other elders laughed as they shook their head. There isn't a single person in Tianchuan City who is unaware of Zhang Xuan's reputation. Yet, you say that he is a talented teacher. What kind of joke is this? Hearing the words of his daughter, clan head Wang Hong was incensed. "I don't care what you say, you have to withdraw from his lessons today. Otherwise, don't even think about stepping into this house ever again." "I don't agree with your decision." Wang Ying might seem weak, but she had a stubborn temperament. She stood up and said indignantly, "You all have never listened into Zhang Xuan Laoshi's lessons, so what rights do you all have to say that his lessons are subpar? What rights do you all have to force me to withdraw from his lessons? We might not have listened into his lessons before, but do you think it is possible for his reputation and teacher qualification examination results to be falsified? An elder replied. Wang Ying Xiao Jie. Stop being stubborn. There are so many students who can testify for whether his lessons are good or not. Do you think that you are the only smart one of the bunch? Another elder stated. I don't know whether the teacher qualification examination results are falsified or not, but I know that he has treated my legs and gave me pointers for my cultivation. I can easily execute a might that is 1-fold greater than previously, Wang Ying declared. Treated your legs? What kind of joke is this? Even Master Yuanyu is unable to do anything about your legs. Yet you claim that a fellow who scored 0 for the teacher qualification examination is able to treat it? Wang Ying Xiaoji. Even if you wish to lie in his stead, you should say something that is more believable. Everyone in the clan was aware of Wang Ying's leg injury. Hearing her words, a few of the elders scoffed coldly. If you all don't believe me, I will prove it to you all. Seeing the looks of disbelief on the elders' faces, Wang Ying didn't continue arguing, and instead walked over to the strength-measuring rock pillar and sent a kick towards it. Pung! The rock pillar shook and a string of numbers appeared. 205. What? Seeing this sight, clan head Wang Hong's eyes narrowed subconsciously. The few elders who were reprimanding Wang Ying a moment ago were also taken aback as their lips trembled from shock. The few elders here had specially looked into the injury of Wang Ying's legs and had deduced that it was impossible to treat it. They concluded that it would be impossible to exert strength in them, and just the fact that she was able to walk normally was already a blessing. Yet, to wield 205 kilograms behind such legs? How was this possible? After kicking the pillar, Wang Ying didn't stop. She turned around and struck on the pillar with a fist. Wang. Numbers displayed on the rock pillar. A force of 120 kilograms behind her fists. You're still Juxi Realm primary stage. I thought you were only able to hit 53 kilograms when you left yesterday. How could it be possible for you to hit 120 kilograms? Clan head Wang Hong abruptly stood up as his voice quivered in agitation. Fighter 1. Dan. Juxi. Realm. Cultivators would learn innate breathing and sensing of spirit in the air. Also, they would gain the ability to look into their body and control the flow of spirit energy in their body with their mind. They would have a strength of 50 kilograms in their primary stage, 70 kilograms in the intermediate stage, 90 kilograms in the advanced stage, and 110 kilograms at the pinnacle. This was the mass that a cultivator would be able to carry with their present strength. It was normal for the strength behind their fist to be slightly lower or higher than the strength attributed to their level of cultivation. Normally, it would already be incredible to achieve an increase of 20% to 30% around that level. Even for a renowned teacher like Lu Xun, he could only induce an improvement of 40%. Despite not breaking through in her cultivation, being still in Juxi Realm primary stage, she was able to hit with a force of 120 kilograms, even stronger than someone at Juxi Realm Pinnacle. This meant that her strength enhancement was greater than a single fold. That was too formidable. I only improved to such an extent due to Zhang Xuan Laoshi's guidance. After hitting the pillar, Wang Ying stopped and declared calmly, with just a slight pointer, he is able to induce such a great improvement? Furthermore, treating your legs as well? Clan leader Wang Hong was in a state of disbelief. In a few short steps, he walked to the front of his daughter. With a single look, he immediately understood that his daughter's legs were truly cured. As the worst teacher in the entire academy, not only was he able to treat an injury Master Yuan Yu was unable to cure, he was even able to induce a massive improvement through a short moment of guidance. Was this for real? Can you tell us a little about the contents of the lessons he went through today? What did he talk about? After a short period of shock, clan head Wang Hong couldn't resist asking. All right. Today, Zhang Laoshi talked about cultivation technique. However, as what he talked about was too profound, I could only remember less than a tenth of it. This is what he said. After hesitating for a moment, she mentioned everything that she recalled in her mind, gathering one's breath and nourishing it. To think that there would be such a profound theory behind a simple Juxi realm. This is too incredible. If only I had undergone such lessons back then, I wouldn't be stuck in such a realm, unable to advance ahead. This is truly the theory derived from a true master. I am enlightened. Just by repeating a few sentences, the clan head and the elders in the room seemed to have gone into a daze, as though they were drunk on those words, on the verge of going frenzied. To be able to become the clan head and an elder of a prestigious clan, they all possess high levels of cultivation. Even the weakest of them are Fighter 6 Dan Pixu realm experts. After cultivating for so many years, they have a higher level of enlightenment towards cultivation, and they understood much more about it. Although Wang Ying was only reciting those words without understanding the underlying theories behind them, to them, those words were no different from the voice of God. It solved many of the mysteries that they were unable to decipher before in an instant, and they felt refreshed. He is truly a master. No, not even a master is able to explain such profound and mystical theories. Clan head Wang Hong's eyes radiated a bright light, and his breath quickened in agitation. Father, father! Seeing her father on the verge of going into a frenzy, Wang Ying tried to pull him back. Ah, Yinger, you must not withdraw from this Zhang Laoshi's lesson at all cost. You must learn from him diligently. After clan head Wang Hong's consciousness was pulled back from a mystical realm, he looked at Wang Ying with a solemn expression and said, "But father, you just said that..." She didn't expect that her father, who tended to be conservative, would change his mind so quickly, to the extent that she was unable to adapt to it on the spot. Father didn't know that Zhang Laoshi would be so incredible. Oh, right. At this point, clan head Wang Hong's face had traces of excitement and anticipation on his face as he asked, "Yinger, can you ask your Zhang Laoshi whether he is still accepting student? Let Wang Yan and Tower learn from him as well. Actually, why don't I become his student as well? Clan head, as the leader of the Wang clan, how could you become the student of the low-level teacher in the academy? If word were to spread, how can our Wang clan continue to uphold our dignity in Tianshuan City?" Before clan head Wang Hong could finish his words, he was interrupted by the words of another elder. After reprimanding the clan head, the elder turned over with a bundle of smiles and said, "Look, I am only a normal elder, and I don't represent the image of the Wang clan. If it is still unacceptable, I can even resign from my position of an elder. So, can you all help me ask him if I am able to acknowledge him as my teacher?" Wang Tao, Wang Ying, and Wang Yan. Clan head Wang Hong. Yinger, Tao adding. After someone's name is an intimate way to address one's sons and daughters, sometimes even close nephews, etc. Jiangxian wasn't aware of the events that occurred in the Wang clan. After the lesson ended, he walked towards the compendium pavilion. My cultivation might have progressed significantly, but I still don't have an in-depth understanding of battle techniques and such. I should quickly look into them. Also, I should also take a look at the 1 Dan and 2 Dan cultivation techniques. Otherwise, if I were to go the lessons without knowing anything, I would definitely give myself away. Zhang Xuan's had multiple breakthroughs in his cultivation yesterday night, causing his strength to soar significantly. However, his knowledge on battle techniques and such were severely lacking. Furthermore, he didn't have an in-depth knowledge of the 1 Dan and 2 Dan cultivation techniques. For example, when he was offering pointers to Zhao Ya earlier today, he didn't know what kind of cultivation technique he should have imparted her to resolve the problem of her pure yin body. This was the ideal time to do a bit of research and prepare for the next lesson, Otherwise, if he was unable to answer the questions of his students, he would expose his ignorance. Elder Mo. Arriving at the Compendium Pavilion again, Elder Mo was still guarding the entrance to it. "What are you here for?" "Yesterday, this fellow, in pursuit of his vanity, came here to make a mess, so Elder Mo had a bad impression of him. Seeing how he was here today again, he couldn't help but frown." "I would like to see the manuals on battle techniques." Zhang Xuan bowed. "Battle techniques? One's cultivation level is the core of one's strength. Instead of training properly, with your cultivation technique, you just had to learn from the negative examples of others, pursuing vanity, enjoying the pleasures of the illusion, and slacking about. Today, you don't have to think about entering the Compendium Pavilion." Elder Mo waved his hand to chase him away. In his opinion, Zhang Xuan's purpose here wasn't even to read the books. Rather, he was here to flip through them to remember a few distinguished points in them to put up a knowledgeable image. The greatest taboo in the guidance of one student was to impart incomplete knowledge. When your pail of knowledge was only half full, it was easy for one student's cultivation to go berserk through misguidance. Yesterday, Zhang Xuan was here twice, and both times, he was only casually flipping through the manuals. Given his speed, he probably didn't even remember the names of the book, needless to say, remembering them. What else could his actions represent other than his pursuit of vanity? The Compendium Pavilion was a location for teachers to research and study at. How could such a person be allowed entry? "I pursue vanity and enjoy the pleasures of the illusion." Zhang Xuan blinked and confusion could be seen in his eyes. Why would he say such words? He couldn't resist asking, "Elder Mo, I am really here to learn and not to create trouble." Da-da-da. Just as he was in the midst of clarifying the situation, footsteps could be heard from his back and an elegant voice sounded out. "Elder Mo, I will be going in to grab a few books." Turning around to take a look, it was the goddess teacher he met yesterday, Shen B. Ru. At this current moment, Shen B. Ru was dressed in light purple. Her slender body accompanied by her incredible figure, and her flawless face brought out an exquisite and refined aura which radiated her surroundings. "Oh, it is Shen Laoshi. Go on in." Seeing that it was her, Elder Mo didn't even try to stop her in the least. Not only was Shen B. Ru beautiful, she was also a reputable genius among the teachers. Despite being just 20-year-old, she had already reached Fighter 5 Dan Pinnacle, just a step away from Pixu Realm. "Thank you, Elder Mo." She nodded her head elegantly. Turning around, she noticed Zhang Xuan, who was just standing by the side, and couldn't help but be a little surprised. In the past, although Zhang Xuan had never confessed to her, he would blush upon catching sight of her and would be unable to speak in front of her, bashful like a lady. Even the densest of people could tell that something was amiss. Initially, she thought that this would be the case this time as well. However, he only took a glance at her before turning around, the adoration he held for her in the past totally absent in those clear eyes of his that resembled the pure spring water, as though he was completely immune to her beauty. The most important point of all was that Zhang Xuan wasn't strong, and he scored badly for his teacher qualification examination as well. As a result, he would always feel inferior upon seeing other teachers, causing him to possess an unconfident disposition from his lack of self-esteem. However, at this moment, just by standing there, he looked dignified with the aura of an extraordinary person. Just by looking at his disposition itself, he was a completely different person from how he was in the past. Recalling the situation when they met yesterday, he even dared to refute Shang Bin straight on. Shen Biru couldn't help but feel bewildered. When did that awkward young man who had an inferiority complex change so much? "Elder Mo, I am also here to browse through the books. Why is she allowed to enter, while I am denied entry?" Zhang Xuan was oblivious to the thoughts of the other party and could only gesture helplessly. Despite being both teachers, he was discriminated even in the privilege to browse through books. What ill luck! Shen Laoshi is entering the pavilion to study. As for what you are going in for, you should be more than aware of it. Do you still need me to point it out for you? Elder Mo harumphed coldly. There are only manuals inside. What else could I be doing inside? With a bitter smile, Zhang Xuan shook his head. Of course I am entering the pavilion to read books and to enhance my knowledge. Enhance your knowledge? Elder Mo was displeased. Flipping through books nonstop, not even stopping in the midst to read through them properly, and you call it studying. Every single cultivation technique inside is incomparably precious. You can't possibly expect to enhance your knowledge by leaps and bounds just by flipping through tons of books without even jotting down notes. How can you possibly study like this? Elder Mo. Just as he was about to continue explaining, Shen Bi Ru smiled faintly, her smile reminiscent of the blooming of a flower, as she said, Zhang Laoshi might really be here to learn. So, why don't you just let him enter? If he were to be stopped here like this, it wouldn't leave a good impression on the other teachers. Since Shen Laoshi pleaded on your account, I will allow you to enter. However, I will tell you in advance first. If you want to look through the books, look through them properly. If I see you wandering around in there and putting up a show, just wait and see how I will punish you. Elder Mo gestured. You have my gratitude. Zhang Xuan nodded his head, then cupped his hand towards Shenbi. Ru to show his appreciation for her help before walking into the compendium pavilion. Initially, Shenbi. Ru thought that since she helped him, he would make use of the opportunity to strike up a conversation with her. Yet, he simply turned around to leave, leaving Shenbi Ru a little stunned. Although she was a little surprised, she didn't pay much heed to it and followed behind him into the compendium pavilion. It was just a casual whim of hers to help Zhang Xuan. There wasn't any special reason or intention behind her action. Since the other party didn't want to chat with her, she was also happy to be spared with the conversation. To think that coming into the compendium pavilion would be so troublesome. The next time, I probably won't be able to enter anymore. Standing in front of the bookshelves, Zhang Xuan did not rush to flip through the books and instead scratched his head. He didn't know why Elder Mo stopped him, but he was sure that it had something to do with his identity as the worst teacher in the academy. The identity was awkward no matter where he went. Not just on the recruitment of students, even his colleagues despised him. The main reason why he was able to enter this time was thanks to Shenbi Ru's words. However, what about the next time? This compendium pavilion isn't very big anyway. If I hurry up, I might be able to browse through it all within today. This way I won't need to enter the next time. Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. Since Elder Mo was determined to stop him, he should just make it so that he would not need to come any more in the future. Given the size of the library, there were hundreds of thousands of books in here. Even if one were to spend their entire lives here, they probably wouldn't be able to finish reading through them. However, he was different. No matter what kind of books it was, as long as he flipped through it, he would be able to compile an identical book of it in the Library of Heaven's Path, with its flaws recorded in it. If he were to move quickly, it shouldn't be impossible for him to imprint all of these books into his head within a single day. Once he succeeded, he wouldn't need to go through so much trouble to come here to look for books. Begin. The moment the thought popped into his mind, Zhang Xuan didn't dawdle any longer and immediately walked towards the first bookshelf. Not concerned with what books they were, he casually grabbed a handful of them and voila, flipped through them. Hoo. Just as he expected, the Library of Heaven's Path jolted and an identical book as the one in his hands appeared on the bookshelf in it. That's the way to go. After realizing that it was possible to compile multiple books simultaneously, he walked forward and grabbed several books at once and imprints them into his head concurrently. Hualala! Hualala! The sound of footsteps and flipping of books echoed in the compendium pavilion. That fellow, he still dares to claim otherwise? That he isn't putting on a show in pursuit for vanity? Elder Mo, who was outside guarding the library, had been paying attention to Zhang Xuan from the moment he entered the library. The previous time, that fellow only flipped through a book at a time before putting it back. Although it was clear to see that he wasn't really serious about it, at least it still looked acceptable. Now he was taking dozens of books at once and playing with them, placing it back in the shelves before he could even see the titles clearly. What the heck was he doing? Was he here to read books, or to choose cabbage? Furthermore, after looking at the manuals which the other party is looking through, he felt a spell of giddiness wisteria. Basics to the relationship of a male and female. The way of amalgamating yin and yang. Refining green emerald pill. The important aspects one should take note of in forging equipment. There were books on all kinds of fields. Cultivation technique, battle technique, cultivation of medical herbs, even on male-female relationship. As long as it was a book, there was nothing that this fellow would not flip through. Everyone had their own shortcomings and merits, and there were limits to a person's energy. It was impossible for one to master every single field. Thus, one had to choose properly on which book they should look through. However, this fellow flipped through every single book without any hesitation. Was he sure that he wasn't here to create trouble? He must be here to cause trouble. When he leaves, I will make sure to teach him a lesson. Elder Mo's face darkened as he harumphed coldly.